Are you tired of fighting the same old dragons over and over again? Wouldn't you rather fight a new family of dragons? Or better yet, wouldn't you rather play as a new dragon species in your 5e or Pathfinder game? Well, now you can. Roll for Combat, the creators of the incredibly popular Battlezoo Ancestries dragons, have done it again with Battlezoo Secret Dragons. This collection of 4 dragon books introduces new families of dragons to the world of 5e and Pathfinder. Now you can play as, or fight, the dragon you never knew you needed. Inside each book, players will find complete rules for playing as one of these new unique dragons, allowing them to unleash new abilities and powers never seen before. Meanwhile, GMs will find pages of monster stats, allowing you to pit these new creatures against your players. Each book features one new family of dragons filled with extensive, in-depth descriptions of their powers and abilities, background and history information, world lore, illustrations, and more to help you introduce these new dragons into your 5e or Pathfinder games. Experience the world of Battlezoo Secret Dragons through 4 new books. Fairy dragons are connected with the Fey realm and love to play pranks and cause mischief. That is, when they aren't conspiring with the courts of the Fae. Misfit dragons are hot, magical messes of magical energy, constantly shifting their physical forms, phasing in and out of existence, or simply releasing random wild magic effects. They're quite a handful. Leshy dragons are deeply connected to nature, allowing them to grow alongside different types of plants, fungi, and leshies. Oh yeah, and they're master chefs as well. And finally, the powerful battle dragons are obsessed with the thrill of combat. Battle dragons love hunting foes, dueling opponents, or commanding their legions to glorious victory. Head over to kickstarter.rollforcombat.com now to secure your copies of Battlezoo Secret Dragons and become the dragon you were always meant to be.
Look at that. Right on time. And we have Derik. You're our first guest in ages, because, I don't know, I've been lazy about getting guests.
No, yeah, I was going to say, nobody wants to deal with your shit anymore. No.
That too.
Yeah, no. I know I've just been very, very busy. New team, new role at work, and they've been keeping me pretty busy, so the opportunity to take a little bit of an afternoon
I
off.
always look forward to having Derik on, because then half the comments will be, I hate Derik.
Why do you look forward to that, Stephen?
Because
controversy.
You're talking to the drama master here.
Okay.
I am the drama master. Well, it's the old private parts. It's like people who loved Howard Stern would listen to him for like 3 hours, and people who hated Howard Stern would listen to him for 4 hours. Mm-hmm. So Derik is our Howard Stern.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think, here's the thing, in the grand scheme of RPG people, I think I am so not horrible compared to like some of the actually horrible people out there. Like, it's not even funny.
It's not even close.
I know,
you could put that as a quote, Derik. I am so not horrible compared to some of the actually horrible people out there.
I was like, right. I'm the least horrible of the horrible people.
Yeah, that's
Derik Malenda. Knights of Last Call. Please join our Discord.
No, my great sin is that I don't love everything, and I don't buy into the idea that just because I buy into the objective quality of art. Basically, I think that things are good. They don't have. It's not everything has to be subjective. That's all. That alone is pretty much what gets me the most hate.
I do the exact same thing, and I don't get nearly as much hate, I think.
Well, you're much more friendly and jovial about it, and you come off as this great giver of wisdom, and I just come off as this like lurking internet troll.
That's so funny. That's true. It's like, I am the giver of wisdom, and you're the know-it-all.
Right.
Mark and I are givers of wisdom.
And anybody who's watched this show for more than like 5 minutes should know that you are an insufferable know-it-all.
I'm just the guy on here who's probably going to make more moderate statements.
You're totally
both
moderate.
of you guys do your stuff.
Yeah, but I am a know-it-all because I know it all.
Only a know-it-all would say that, Stephen.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, but I know my topics pretty well. But if I don't know a topic, I'll say I don't know about a topic.
Right. Well, that's when you get the Stephen. he's clearly like other people are talking and he can't stand it, and he's like, you see him, he's like doing his taxes off screen.
Exactly. Oh no, I can stand it. It gives me an opportunity to do something else. It's fine with that.
He's like, now I have to fill in row 29F.
Oh, I never do my own taxes. Are you crazy?
I think this year was my last year doing them because, you know, with the channel and the other, it's you know,
my taxes are like a foot thick. Like seriously, they're insane. It's really bad.
Here, you want to know how you make a D&D adventure disappointing? You'd start off with taxes.
Okay, there we go. Let's not talk about that. That's like that is the least interesting thing to start talking about. But let's talk about some interesting things. It is the beginning of con season, which I am looking forward to. I am going to be at Origins with Derik. And I'm in 2 talks at Origins. I don't even know what they are. Well, one of them is a talk.
Were you the one who arranged them? Because that usually is true that we don't know what the topic's going to be until like right before it when you arrange something.
Well, no. Well, because Kelsey Dion invited me to them because she's doing a talk.
And Kelsey was just like, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but will you come to the talk? And you're like, yeah.
I don't care. I can talk about anything. I'm a know-it-all, remember? So, one of them is, I don't even know what the talk is. Let me see. I'm going to look it up. But the other one actually is, that one I do know. That's a live play. And Kelsey Dion is running Shadow Dark. And it's on Friday, I think. Let me look myself up in the Origins. If anyone knows where I'm going to be, please let me know. But it's going to be like a game with a couple of YouTubers and people playing Shadow Dark. And I already warned her I'm going to totally destroy and break that game. And she said, bring it. I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be fun. She's excited. So, yeah. I mean, it's like, this is going to be a fun game. So we're going to do that. And then the other talk will not be like that. So there we go. And then it's Gen Con.
Which I think I'm only like 30% to attend.
Oh, yeah. You were like 0, but I guess you went up to 30.
Yeah, well, it all depends on whether I go to Vegas this summer.
I'm going to go to Vegas this summer. In fact, I think I'm flying from Gen Con to Vegas.
Well, that would be a problem for me. So
why?
But if I end up going to Vegas, then I'm not going to go to Gen Con. But if I don't go to Vegas, then I'm going to be sitting there like, man, it's going to be like months before I get to do anything. And it's like, do I really want the only thing I do this summer to be Origins? And then it'll probably put pressure on me to try to figure out a way to make Gen Con happen. So.
Oh, there you go.
Even though it'll be super expensive and inconvenient and a pain in the ass, as I've described many times, and people hate me for that too.
Yeah, a lot of people hate you because you're like, oh, if I don't get a hotel right next door, I'm not going.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's not that big of a deal. It really isn't. I hate to break it to you. It's like, I've done the Uber. It's not that horrible. In fact, it's kind of relaxing. You just sit there.
It's not to get off on this topic, but it's not even about that per se. It's the fact that the convention itself is not set up in a way to support the fact that 75+% of its con goers are basically off campus. And so like they need to have a better structure in place in order to be able to support that many people who are sort of unable to access a room or something like that. Like there's no place, like there are no lounges, you know, there are no like provided storage locations. They should have, there's like one tiny insignificant little booth where you can do like FedEx shipping or UPS shipping or whatever. It's like that kind of stuff needs to be expanded so that you can actually deal with the people who are attending. But the con just keeps running the same con back every single time. They just take more people's tickets. And so, and the other thing I've always talked about too is like, there's still only one, Paizo booth. There's still going to only be one Jason Bullman. There's still only going to be one, Eric Mona. So like, whether there was 20,000 people or 30,000 people or 60,000 people or 75,000 people, the numbers don't change there. The ratio does. So
it's still fun. I don't care. I still have fun. Anyhow, there is a question. Says, do you know of any live play video streams of Jewel of the Indigo Isles? Yes. In fact, there is a podcast, and they're almost done with section 2 or book 2. And that is, let me look them up.
It's 25 North. Multiple people told the person in the chat.
25
Including
North.
me.
Really? I didn't see. Oh, check out 25 North Discord too. Yep, there we go. All right, well, I'm just going to say it because not everyone reads
for the
the
people
chat,
out
Mark.
loud who aren't reading the chats
You'd
along
be
the side.
surprised how few people read the chat.
No, I agree. I wouldn't be surprised. I assume that other than during the stream when people are reading the chats because we're talking to them, probably anyone who's watching this later on YouTube is like 1% to be reading the chats.
I
At best.
actually will probably also maybe do a live stream or podcast of it. I'm kind of surprised because I told my core group, because we're almost done with book 5 of Agents of Edgewatch, and I said, oh, I really want to run Jewel, and I told them what it's like, and they're like, oh yeah, we want to play. I'm like, you guys are like the most hardcore players. You realize what type of adventure this is. They're like, oh yeah. They all really wanted to play. They were super excited, so I was like, oh, maybe I'll run them through it. I kind of thought...
it works.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, it works with any group, but it is a little goofy. This is a little bit of a goofy adventure in parts. And yeah, I mean, you could run it however you want. I would run my adventure a little goofy, but at the same time, they seem to be gung-ho for it. So
there you go.
I might do it. I might run it with them. I was thinking mixing it up, but I might just have my core group go and really, then I can go all out. Because then I have no gumption about like absolutely just killing them off. Or like really making things crazy hard. I will have no qualms whatsoever on that. So that'll be fun. Anyhow, so let's get into some news topics before we get into the main topic. And I'm going to get into a topic that I'm going to do a big topic on, but I'm going to do a mini topic. Everyone, are you ready for controversy?
No. I feel like you should get your spreadsheets in order and come with all of the numbers and information for a big topic.
No, I'm going to talk about it a little bit.
Okay,
and then
steal
I'll
your
talk
own
about
thunder.
it.
Go.
I'm going to still talk because it just happened. Okay, all right. The MCDM role-playing game, the RPG. I got my little notice saying you have to do your fulfillment through BackerKit. And I'm like, okay. So I do my fulfillment, and I bought 2 books. I bought the Heroes hardcover handbook and the Monsters hardcover handbook in the United States. And shipping in the United States, or shipping worldwide, has gotten totally out of hand. It's gotten totally out of hand. I will do a full topic, but I got to go on my sheets. But very long story short, shipping has basically been increased about 30% a year. Every year since COVID, if you do the math, that's like, huge increases. If it's 30% every year, we're talking about like 150% increase over the last like 4 years. It's totally nuts. But there is one thing in the United States called media mail. So media mail is a special type of shipping that you can do that, as long as you have it cannot contain... you can't do media mail is things for educational. You could do like books, DVDs, CDs, film, cassettes, vinyl recordings, believe it or not. You could do it basically for books, and a lot of people use media mail, and media mail is very cheap. I'll give you an idea. £5 for media mail is $7.09. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I shipped out a lot of books with for the Patreon, as like giveaways and stuff like that. And yeah, I was always like, oh wow, if it's media mail, it's pretty dang cheap.
Yeah, it's really cheap. At £10 is $10.82. So for 2 books on the MCDM, I got hit with a shipping total of $26 for 2 hardcover books in the United States.
I just filled out my BackerKit pledge because you reminded me of that, and yeah, mine was like $26 or something, $27.
And I was like, wait a second, come on! Like, okay, if I was in another country or in Canada where it's very expensive, or Australia where it's very expensive, right? There's a lot of places it can be, but let's just say those books, we'll say there's £6. That's $7.83 that's costing them to ship it. $26? Let's just say we'll add in a $5 surcharge for handling and the boxes. Come on, MCDM. I'm actually kind of pissed about this. I want to do a much larger episode on this, but I just don't understand.
Wait a second. Is your complaint that people are using shipping and processing as a way to pad additional fees? Because that's been happening since like the 80s.
No, that's always been happening, but like $1 or $2, sure. Okay, because you have to account for returns, you have to account for damages. Like $1 or $2 to handle that is, I think, acceptable. That's what I do. Like,
given how many people complain to Steven about fees where he is not doing a large amount of padding for that, he's just dealing with the increase, and we constantly get people talking about it. I can see why for him this topic is very close to home, and that's why he wanted to do a big topic with spreadsheets to analyze the shift, what's happened from the perspective of an insider, of an actual publisher who's doing the sending, not just a customer, and then trying to like put things into perspective. I think that's going to be a really good episode. That's the kind of thing I would want to see, because it has inside information that like only Steven or a publisher who prints a ton of books would have.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that this just happened to me with someone from Germany, and he was complaining because it was like $70 or something. But he ordered a lot of books, and I've been talking to him through email. Like I said, look, here's my shipping charts. Like, it's expensive. I mean, I'm basically just covering my fees, and this is what it costs. And the other thing is, when you go about £5 overseas, the prices skyrocket. It goes from like $30 to $70. It's like £5 is 30. £6 is 70. It goes astronomical. And actually, recently they've been changing it down to £4. So they're squeezing you in every direction possible. Long story short, if this shipping was $13, I'd be okay. $15, all right, that's a little expensive. Come on, $26. It's costing them $8 to ship this thing. Come on.
Val is in chat, and she said, "Thank God I get my mail delivered by ravens."
Hey, Val, you're free. I could have invited you to the show. I can still invite you to the show, Val. If you're free, she's never free.
You know what they say: dark wings, dark words.
Oh God,
there you go.
Corkboards in Korea. Let me know if you're free, Val. I'm gonna squeeze you in. I'll tick Derik off and bring Val in, because she's more fun.
By all means, I have a racquetball game. That's fine.
That's fine. I'm going to do a long thing on this, but I do want to say I can't believe it. She's going to sleep. All right. Forget about that. But let's go to a fun one. Let's go to a fun one. That Kickstarter is evolving. So Kickstarter now has new tools, and one of the big ones is late pledges, which we have ourselves. If you want to get the Dragon book, I'm going to end it this week, though. I'm ending it this week.
Yeah, well, I think we have to end it so we can put out the surveys.
Yeah, I got to end it to send out the surveys.
That's the one disadvantage of it, is it's delayed the surveys somewhat.
Yeah, it delays the surveys a little bit, but it takes 2.5 weeks for Kickstarter to actually get through it anyhow. So realistically, it really gives you only...
It probably barely delayed it then.
Yeah, really, like, you add approximately... I mean, you could do it for as long as you wanted to, but really, you only add maybe, like, 3 to 4 weeks to your end of your Kickstarter. But if you want to get the Roll for Combat Secret Dragons, just go to... It's on there. Look at that. It says kickstarter.rollforcombat.com, and you can get new dragons. Val, who's in her pajamas, who's going to sleep in 30 minutes, she wrote for the book. How about that?
Yeah, for the Leshy Dragons book, she wrote some really cool lore.
Yeah, so there you go. Derik,
what is Kickstarter evolving into, Steven? You said it's evolving. Is it evolving into Punt Starter? Like, does it have a different evolution name, like an Eldamon or a Digimon or a Pokemon?
No, it just said that was in their press release. The press release.
The press release is like,
said that we are evolving. Here we go. It says, let's see, blah, 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 blah. I'm trying to see what they wrote here. They have late pledges. They have new survey tools to do more detailed surveys. I don't really use that tool, though. Backer kit surveys for easier fulfillment. I think that's it. I think late pledges is kind of the big thing. The thing is, late pledges Although I've been talking to a lot of people, they're going, if you have late pledges, doesn't that kind of ruin the whole point of Kickstarter? Like, you kind of want to get it before it ends. So
I kind of agree with that.
Yeah. That's kind of the issue. But there is a thing, though. You can change the pricing for late pledges. So you can make it that if you pledge during the regular time, it's one price, but then late pledge, it's a different price. So there are tools to allow you, as I found out.
But I'm willing to bet most people don't want to do that, right? Because they don't want to turn down.
Yeah, whatever. And exactly, why would they turn it down? So we just got invited because it was a beta, and they gave it to me literally like a day before the Kickstarter was ending. So I was like, okay, I'll try it. Why not? Actually, you got us an extra stretch goal, so there you go. I'll tell you the other thing. So, Derik, what do you think of the new cover for the D&D book?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay. It's not like my favorite cover of all time. Okay. I mean, I think it's a little strange. It's a little strange to me that there is a metallic dragon on the cover.
Well, there's a red dragon too on the lower left.
There's a red dragon. You just think it's a kobold. We've seen the full piece of art on the article, and the one on the bottom is actually a red dragon. It just gets cut off, and I couldn't tell.
The prominent, like I've seen some analysis with people like drawing sight lines off of the characters. Like, what are these characters even looking at? It's like
there's a full.
That's a little absurd.
There's a full piece though. If you see the full piece.
No, I've seen it back on the breaker or whatever, where it's like the wraparound piece. Mm-hmm. It's like it's fantasy adventurers fighting against monsters. The thing that really like people are like, I think the criticism of it was like crazy to me. Like I was like, it's got that kind of pseudo watercolory kind of quasi impressionist kind of painterly style that has kind of become very popular. As opposed to like the really hyper, almost I would say like very precise line work that you might get out of like more traditional.
We covered this all last week. We covered the whole thing. We went right through.
So why are you bringing it up again then, Steven?
Yeah, because they announced a book out of nowhere. I just put the link in. Actually, no one knew about this. Dungeons and Dragons: Worlds and Realms: Adventures from Greyhawk to Faerun and Beyond. It is a lore book that illustrates the multiverse. This actually wasn't in anything, and it just kind of appeared out of nowhere. And it's coming out in October. But look at the cover for that book. I was like, okay, that's a good cover. Why do they make that the cover for the Player's Handbook? Look at that cover. That's a good freaking cover.
Well, I mean,
Anyhow, I'm not putting it up right now, but it's a black dragon in a horde of gold fighting a female sorcerer and like a male warrior fighter. That's it. It's a very simple cover, but it's evocative. It looks cool. I mean, it's not the best cover, but I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty fascinating. I mean,
yeah, of course it's good, Steven.
What the heck does that have to do with worlds? Steven, I know, it is literally that. You're right. It is that. You're right.
It's literally a reimagining of the Errol Otis cover from BX.
You're right. You're completely right. It's a completely updated version of that same. Why didn't they do that? Because that's. Oh,
listen, this is odd. I mean, listen, I love that piece of art in the link that you gave.
Yeah.
Because, it's literally this. So
you're right. I didn't even think. I was like, oh, this looks familiar. And I couldn't put my finger. You know why? Because the dragon looks so different.
Yeah, to be fair, they up the dragon sensibility is a little bit more updated. I mean, there's definitely no doubt that this is a little bit weird for what we would normally consider to be but yeah.
Yeah, but the point is, even the background's identical. Like, it's exactly the same as the oldest one.
I absolutely love that piece of art, and I have just pre-ordered the book.
Oh. There you go. There you go. That's how effective that book is. Who's Derik, by the way? People want to know who you are, Derik.
What? Everybody knows who I am.
No, someone doesn't know who you are. Who are you?
Wait, Kalamakis definitely knows who I am.
Who the heck who's Derik? They say I love Derik. Some people say they hate you. Derik hates Leshy Dragons. Derik is the proprietary Lord and Savior, God Almighty of Knights of Last Call.
Please. No, I think Kalamakis is saying who's Derik with an E because my name is spelled Derik.
Derik. I spelled it right. Where did I
You did. But
someone in chat did.
Oh, okay.
That's what happened.
I thought because sometimes we do intros, but we don't do intros because we all know who Derik
Right.
is.
Now, Perf Jenkins says, what is a Derik? That's a great question. And I would say it is a device used to aid in the transport and drilling of oil.
Is that a Dalek? Are you
it's
a
a Derik.
Dalek? Okay, a Derik.
No, it's a Derik.
I get it. Anyhow, this book, what makes this book so weird is look at that cover. What the heck does that cover have to do with Worlds and Realms, Adventures, and like...
It's easy. Well, that's easy. I can answer that.
Okay.
Nostalgia.
Okay.
That cover is designed for people like me to go, holy shit, it's a reimagining of the Errol Otis cover from 1981's Moldvay Basic box set, the magenta box set. Oh, awesome. I love it.
Like Derik is right. It is a nostalgia book on a nostalgia topic of getting you all of your favorite realms in the multiverse back.
Right. I mean,
into a lore book with a nostalgic cover. Like that is a solid marketing combo. We've seen it was solid. Derik just pre-ordered it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, not only that, I mean, look at the cover, right? You have two characters, okay, who aren't anime by any stretch of the imagination, and they're fighting over a chest of treasure in what appears to be a dungeon, and they're fighting a dragon. I mean, that rules out like 60-70% of the modern RPG audience anyways. They have no interest in any of that. Is it anime? Is it a dragon? Is it in a dungeon? Are we fighting for treasure? Does my character have some sort of broken ability or 5 pages of character notes? Well, then I'm not interested. Pass the turn. And also, it also fails the new modern test of, is it grimdark? Are there skeletons? Is this a game of edgelord horror? Well, then also get the hell out.
So what's our stuff? What's the
you
Battlezoo
occupy
stuff?
Well, it depends. I mean, obviously if we're talking like pure Gomayan, then it's a zany RPG fun.
Yes, that's exactly right. We're zany. We're zany and silly. A little bit of silly, a little bit of zany.
Right. And if anything, actually, that not specifically you, because again, like I don't think like the Eldamon book is fundamentally like cutesy. I mean, I get that Eldamon have a sort of cute element to them, but especially the evolved forms. I mean, that's anyways. But
oh, and you see, I got the. Oh wait, I didn't even show. I didn't even show this to Mark. Oh, look at this! I got the proofs. These are the actual book. This thing looks amazing in print. Holy crap! Does this thing look good?
Yeah, that looks awesome. Yeah, we're delayed because of real life issues, but there's a discussion of how we can get Eldamon into Northern Reaches season 3.
Oh, nice. This is I might even have a book for you, Derik, at the convention.
Oh well, that'd be sweet. Oh yeah, good stuff.
Sweet.
Yeah, now it came out.
I'm looking forward to getting mine too.
Yeah, you'll get one too, maybe. Maybe if you're good.
Someday.
If you behave, we'll get you one. Look at that! I got all my I got my. Oh, that's actually I got this one. No, that's that's the wrong one.
I really like the cover, the art for Eldamon. I thought that was like a really, really good piece.
Yeah, no, this came out really good. Well, you know what? Because I like really bright, colorful, fun. Right. I don't know. It looks good on the paper too.
Right.
So
I mean, to be completely bluntly honest with you all, and again, if you haven't clicked on that link, that style of art.
It's Errol Otis type style, which is the type I like.
But I mean that is to me what I basically want all my D&D art to look like. I mean, like I like Dungeons and Dragons, and I like warriors and sorceresses, and that's my style. So like when a lot of modern art kind of misses me a little bit. But
you think that looks good? You want to see the piece of art in here? If that didn't convince you to buy it, how about this one? Actually, I don't know if this is going to go in. I think it's not. It's too long. Hold on.
Was already convinced.
I already bought it. Well, how much more convincing could I need?
Steven, you have to learn an important marketing
I know what it is.
Message
what you
that
saw,
they were
what
trying
you
to tell
sell.
us in the thing, which is once you've sold it to the person, you can just be quiet and let them be happy about that.
I know. Look at that.
You don't have to keep sending them messages about it.
I'm going to keep sending you messages till the end of time. Let's see if this works. No, I can't get it. It's too long, the link. But look at that picture of Gray. It's actually, all right, I'll send the link.
Okay, so that art I don't like as much.
Oh, really? I like that art. In there, there's some art. The picture of Greyhawk, I like that. Look at that goofy thing.
The beholder looks a little goofy. There's a fox or some sort of cat person with the wand.
Yeah.
And again,
Look at the
there's
Gibbering
elements.
Mouther. Ooh, that looks
There's
good.
elements of it that I think is really, really good. But
Gibbering Mouther looks good.
what gibbering mouther?
Scroll down the page of the link I just sent you.
Oh, I didn't open the page.
There, I just sent it to you. It's on the thing.
I mean, that is a good gibbering mouther.
Yeah,
All right, let me take a look.
Mouther. That's like one of my favorite monsters of all time. I've killed more people with gibbering mouthers than any other monster. By far. Not even close.
Yeah, I mean it's not my favorite art for that particular creature, but
It's fun.
It's all right.
It's cute.
I like it.
I like it. I didn't say it's like a 10 out of 10, but it's fun.
anyway.
So I think there's a tie-in in between this lore book that you're showing now, Stephen, and our main topic about some of the pre-made adventures.
Soon.
At least to my theory for why you're seeing this phenomenon that you discussed.
Oh, I got two more real quick ones because these are ones I want to talk about.
Fair enough.
So everyone, I'm sure, was there a game you used to play with your friends in high school all the time, after school, or like on the
Settlers of
weekends?
Catan
Really?
and Axis and Allies.
Oh my God, I feel
Magic
bad.
the Gathering.
I feel bad for you, Derek.
Yeah, Magic the Gathering.
So for me, it was Talisman. So every single day after school, me and my friend Mark and his brother Lee, we used to go to his house and play Talisman. And every day we would play a different character. So we never got to play the same. We very rarely played the same character twice. And it was back when Talisman was coming out with the expansions. And they were coming out with expansions like every couple of months. So
There are a lot of expansions.
and
to
I got
Talisman.
them all. And we played every single day. Now, I know Talisman is not a great game, but
It is not. Talisman is
but it's
the
so much fun.
fantasy board game equivalent of Shoots and Ladders.
It is crazy. Well, Talisman 5th edition is coming out for Gen Con by Avalon Hill, which is fascinating because where'd that come from? Here's the link. Look at that thing. It looks incredible. And actually, the art is ridiculous how much they spent on this. I'm like, wow, they spent a lot of money on this.
It's probably going to be like $155.
Still, I mean, that is.
I mean, it's more surprising to me.
impressive.
It's like how do you update the rules for a game and still manage to make it be boring? Right? That's a real challenge.
Well, we'll play it at Gen Con. Let's see how much it is. Actually, you could pre-order it now. It is $59.
So they must be like mass marketing producing it or something.
Well, it's
like,
Avalon Hill, yeah, but
no,
still.
I'm saying I'm saying the quality of the components is going to be really
Did
low.
you see the quality?
Yeah, I mean, you don't know. Like, I mean, obviously those things are, we live in an era of 3D printers, and I'm assuming that all those like cards
Those are
and like the little
definitely molded.
player tableaus are just going to be like that real thin card stock.
Well, here's the thing that doesn't make sense, and I'm going to tell you right now. Who cares? The card stock pricing has not really, like, as someone who gets these quotes, the pricing has not really, it used to be very different. Like thick versus thin, all that, there's no difference. It's practically the same. But the art is art. Art is crazy expensive, okay? Whether you get art on a thin piece of cardboard or a thick piece of cardboard, it's still going to cost a ton of money. Here, it's Talisman, the game. It's Avalon Hill Talisman, the Magical Quest board game, 5th edition, ages 12 and up. There we go.
I mean, I'm telling you, people, literally, this is the game of life, but with a fantasy theme. Like you just roll the dice, you move your character, you see what happens. You roll your dice, you move your character, you see what happens. It's boring.
It is so much fun.
Again, I mean,
Derek, I'm with you, but Steven has talked about how much he likes this bad game like 12 times on this show, and I've given long descriptions of why I don't like it the other time, so I'm just not going to do it again.
all right, fair enough.
It's. I never
I am
said.
with you, Derek, 100%.
Well, you got to have all the, but you get the expansions, and then you're like going to the cities and the towns. It does get
Look,
much
it's
better.
bad no matter what.
No.
It doesn't matter what expansions
The
you
dungeon
add.
was great. I love the dungeon.
No, look, I'm not trying to say, like, for example, if I turn this into some sort of drinking game with my buddies and I was in a mood to get destroyed, then yeah, that could be a lot of fun.
Here's the thing. I have no idea. I have not played it since then. So I definitely would like to try it again more recently.
I would play it with you, Stephen.
Oh,
because I could appreciate your heartfelt love for the game.
I don't know. It was just fun. Who knows?
Watch the twinkle in Steven's eye as he's playing.
You know what they say, right? Interested people are interesting, right?
What does that say? That means I'm interesting?
Well, no, you're interested in the game.
Oh, so. Yeah.
And that makes it interesting. It's just kind of how like you could play the best TTRPG in the world with people who all don't want to be there and they think they hate it and it's going to be awful. When you can play the worst TTRPG in the well, maybe not because we all know about some that have been excised from history, but you can play a pretty bad TTRPG with people who all love it and are pumped and have a great game that's one of your best games that you've ever played of any TTRPG.
By the way, Tim Johnson said Space Hulk is another one of these. Wrong. Okay, Space Hulk is good.
Space Hulk is good, period.
Yes, it is. That is a very, very good game. Very stressful.
Yeah, very stressful. And I mean, I haven't played the game in many editions. I know there's a new edition, but like the whole thing with the blips and like exploring the Hulk and like it has that kind of aliens tension to it. It's very
good because the Space Marines are very powerful but very slow.
They are Terminators.
And the Gene the Gene Stealers.
Gene
Stealers are first they're endless. They never stop. And they're fast. And they die very quickly, but they just swarm you. And the best is you get a flamethrower and then you lay down like 8 squares of fire down the hallway, and then you run away, and they're like literally killing themselves to put out the fire. It's so
Stephen trying to explain to an audience predominantly of TTRPG and video game players how cool it is to AoE low-level minions. Yep. And we all know this, Stephen.
Tim Johnson, who said that before, indicated he doesn't he's not disagreeing, I think. He means it's in the same vein because it's a board game,
got it.
I also want to shout out Matt Hemming, who said there may come a day when Stephen learns the folly of trying to introduce a topic by asking Derik if he's excited about something, but it is not this day.
Hey, hold on though. Derik became excited about.
He was excited. We're gonna play it in Origins.
Not Talisman, but the book that was before that.
Very excited for that book.
Maybe we'll play Space Hulk. But we can play. The Space Hulk's really a 2-player game, though. That's the problem.
I've enjoyed all of these the D&D art books that they've produced. I think they're all just gorgeous and beautiful. And
yeah.
Well, okay. What's your last topic, Stephen? And then we get into the real one.
We're going to get into the main topic. So here's the main topic. Ooh. Before we do the main topic, do subscribe. I am stuck with, I can't believe we're stuck at like 19,200 followers. We've been stuck at this for a couple of weeks now.
Stephen, I've heard from other YouTubers that some of them have been going down recently.
Yeah. Or, you know why? Because all your guys' channels just rode that OGL hype wave right in.
I've been hearing from people who aren't doing any OGL stuff and haven't been doing it in a while.
Well, that's my point. They haven't been doing it in a while.
We cover other things. And more importantly, Derik's catching up, and I can't allow that. I can't have Derik's channel catch up to my channel. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
It'd be fine if
slow and cynical wins the race.
Even it's not about other channels, it's about our channel and our community. It doesn't matter if other channels are doing well or better or worse. Other than that, you should be happy for Derik, who is a friend of the show, if his channel is doing well.
All I hear patrons, all I hear is that they're afraid that we're coming for them. That's right.
Don't come for us.
The Night Nation rise up.
There you go.
Knights, don't ever take us. No, I'm actually happy because I remember when Derik was happy for 10,000. Now you're up to like 13,000. I'm like, man, Derik, what are you doing right over there? I don't get it.
Nothing.
I know, that's what's amazing, and yet you still keep growing. Maybe I got to do what Derik's doing.
There's this weird population of people who are feel disenfranchised by any one particular game, and like me are just sort of on a quest to find the Holy Grail, and so we look eternally seeking, looking at new games and looking deep and the other thing too, not to sidetrack on my own channel, But there's a lot of great channels out there. Questing Beast, Dave Thomavor.
I know. I'm
no. I'm saying
kidding.
they do these games, which is totally great, and they do a great job of them. But their videos are 10 minutes long, right? And so
you and I don't do 10-minute videos.
No, and so like a lot of people who watch my channel, I think, are like, I want basically to read this book without having to read this book, and I want to see what I can beg, borrow, steal from it. They're like, I will never play this game, but are there mechanics that I could steal, hack, and would I be useful? Right. It's hard to get that out of a 10-minute video, but when Derik spends 2.5 hours talking about it and we get into the weeds on it, I think people appreciate those conversations, or they hate them and then they never come back. But either way, we've segmented our audience.
There you go. That is another thing, is that the algorithm knows who your audience is. Whereas one thing on this channel that automatically holds it back is the fact that it also has the actual play episodes, which is different, and the algorithm cannot stand it when you have two things that are different that are alternating around. So you like, from what I've heard, you could do double your numbers if you don't do that.
My channel never does worse than when we are running an actual play, because when I'm publishing actual play episodes, they do less than half. And then the algorithm goes, okay, well, I showed this 4-hour actual play to somebody and they didn't click on it, so they must not ever want to see anything from your channel ever again. And also, those people watch RPG channels, which means no one in the RPG space wants to see your thing, so I'm not going to show you to anybody as well either. So yeah, actual plays do actually kill my channel. I mean, we still do them when they're fun, but yeah. Well,
anyhow, do like and subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. If you want to do like, I mean, look, we got 50 likes, we got 200. If we get 100 likes, we got to make Derik do something. It's been a while, but here we go.
I've done it all.
We've done it all. We'll find something new for Derik to do. If we get 100 likes, we're going to make Derik do something embarrassing, which is known as Derik doing something. Anyhow, so
we're actually going to go to the main topic, which, if everyone remembers, because it has been a while since you clicked on this episode at the beginning, is Steven is wondering what's going on with the reputation that D&D's pre-made adventures have. It's especially interesting in light of our 2 weeks ago episode where we went deeply through Vecna, which we're not going to give deep spoilers. I think this episode, you should go back to that if you want them. But they have literally some of the best authors who can write adventures, and we have seen the same people write really good adventures who are writing these adventures. Who wrote Vecna is like a star-studded list of authors for their designers who are writing them in-house, but yet the response that we're seeing from these D&D adventures is very different from when those authors wrote something for Paizo or wrote something else. And so the question is, what's going on? Like, what are the variables that we've isolated? What are the issues? Why do D&D pre-made adventures have the reputation that they have for disappointing the audience when they're released?
Yeah, that's actually good. That is exactly it, is that in my mind, there's different types of adventures. There's sort of, I'll categorize them. There's the old school adventures that we used to get back in D&D first edition. And those adventures were, if you look at them now, you'd be like, whoa. I mean, they're literally just rooms, stuff in them, figure it out, maybe a little bit of lore. And that's it. And we loved it. Because everything was just so new back then. You just didn't. He's bringing them out. Like, you read those adventures, you think they're so rich and vivid, and just have that was all in your mind. Like,
all right, we're getting ahead of the shark, but okay, so not this one. Sorry, this is X1. Okay, this is Isle of Dread.
Yeah, I love that.
And me and a lot of other people would tell you that we have extremely vivid memories, very powerful memories, very evocative memories of this very complex and deeply satisfying adventure with a lot of moving pieces and knobs and dials. And it is 30 pages long.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So what's happening there? Well, I think it's what you just said. It's part of our collaborative imagination. The adventure lives in here instead of on the page.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has made all the difference.
Well, then you have the other end of the spectrum, which I would say are the Paizo adventures. and which really started with Dungeon Magazine. I mean, if we'll go back, we'll say Dungeon Magazine, because Dungeon Magazine was fascinating, because Dungeon Magazine, because they were publishing 3, 4, 5 adventures a month, every single month, they really started to
So good.
It was so good. And they really, and Eric Mona was editor-in-chief, and I talked to him about this a lot. They were able to really refine and fine-tune how adventures should be presented, because they were getting feedback. I mean, think about it. Like, they were literally publishing a magazine, which they would get letters back and feedback from readers, so they knew exactly what was working and what wasn't working. Okay, I could do a whole episode.
They also
of
went
just
out
that.
and solicited.
Yeah.
I remember in a lot of places to try to get as much feedback as possible. Especially there was a particular point in time later on where they were kind of doing a relaunch of Dungeon to like change up what was in it, and they asked a lot of people in some like in a variety of different places, and they listened to everything that they heard and relaunched it. This was way before my time at Paizo, but I am familiar with when this happened.
Yeah, I mean, when Dungeon was canceled, I mean, I was literally like devastated. I love that magazine, so I never looked more forward to anything in my life was that monthly. Oh.
This is it. This was the final issue of Dungeon.
I know.
2007, because then you had WoTC take it over.
Ugh.
And
so
but you know what you gotta love the hustle, right? I mean, this is kind of dating the site, because it's 2007. So you've got the final issue of Dungeon Magazine, and right on that inside cover,
it's Pathfinder.
they're plugging Rune Lords, but you know that would evolve basically.
It was a Pathfinder adventure path that was just not in the Pathfinder RPG.
Right, Pathfinder. Right, there was no Pathfinder existed before Pathfinder RPG. Yes, exactly.
Right.
That's exactly
the brand
right.
existed before the RPG. Don't forget that.
Yeah, exactly.
But
That's actually a good point.
But the thing about those adventures is, I would best categorize those adventures as almost stories that you could read and enjoy on their own without even having to run it. I mean, you literally are almost like a choose your own adventure in your mind. It is incredibly evocative. There's a lot. They're fantastic, and you could just read them. You don't need, they're just wonderful.
But the other thing is, if we, to be fair, I think the adventure path started to change this a little bit. But there was a certain amount of exception to that, because, even if it was 6 or 7, or actually some of those early adventure paths, I think had like 9 or 10 adventures in them.
Oh yeah, Shackled City had.
Well, no, that was 12. It was 12.
And Shackled City.
12.
And the Shackled City Collector's Edition added an additional.
It does.
It added Draxar's Way because there was a gap in levels between the first and the second adventure.
Right, between Life's Bazaar and Flood Season, I think.
That's right. Life's Bazaar and Flood Season.
You guys are way above me.
What?
The pay grade.
I played the beginning of Shackled City. I remember.
I did not play Shackled City.
I did not finish it either, but I did play it. It was very, very cool adventure. But anyways, so that did change the thing a little bit, because now you had a bunch of people, but fundamentally people were all still working on their own adventures and whatever. But like when we go back to some of those classic adventures, right? I mean, let's look at, Isle of Dread, right? It's by David Cook and Tom Moldvay, the guys who wrote, the that edition of the game. This is, B1. It's by Mike Carr, not by 27 people. A lot of these new adventures that I see, especially these like anthology ones and stuff, there's a lot of authors.
The fact that book only had Steven said only had 4 main designers.
I still think that's a lot
who were writing it. Although I do not have it in my hands. There may have been a separate author title that he did not read off of that, but
no, I get it. I get it, because the book is way thicker. Asking one person to write 275 pages is nuts. But, the fact of the matter is, I don't think B1 is actually that particularly good of a module, but it is a classic. But this had one vision, one person who understood the entirety of the adventure. In these cases, by the way, these modules, I mean, these are basically just dungeons with.
But the first one you brought up had 2 people.
That's true.
It was your example that you brought up first.
And to be fair, I don't think
for 30 pages.
Look, Weiss and Hickman wrote some great books. I'm not saying that 2 or that there's a number in which if it's not 1, it fails. I'm just saying when you get too many cooks in the kitchen, right, I think it starts to dilute the effectiveness. And also, there's a big difference between two authors having penmanship over 30 pages. Can you imagine working on something with another person, Mark, who is on your level, and you're working on a 30-page book? You'd be like,
I've actually done something.
I was
Had
gonna
to
say
do something
we do
like
the whole
that once
time.
for an even shorter thing for freelancing at Paizo, and it was a little wild when it was that short. I do have to admit that.
Right, absolutely. And, and we were just talking about this before we went live, you get stuff handed out at Free RPG Day, which is longer and more complicated than this, and will be read by some people and thrown away and never even played. Whereas this has manifested for eons. I mean, they literally got its own 5th edition adventure, right? Didn't it? They redo the Isle of Dread or something like that, or it's been redone in 4th
It
edition.
did a lot of things.
Yeah, like this is like a
It's
classic
because
model.
it was there first. It staked claim in a field where there weren't other things, so it became a common shared experience for a generation of players.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's also the style of what people are expecting to get is different. And I'm going to make an alternate version of your too many cooks argument, because it's part of my argument, but it's a little different. And I want to make it now because you made one about the actual authors. I think, and someone in chat, I think Jonas Devlin may have said this here too, that there is a pretty solid chance that there were too many masters. I don't mean too many cooks in the sense of too many designers who were able to write for the book. I think there were too many masters. I do not have inside info. Nobody at WoTC has told me this, although according to someone in the chat, there have been authors who spoke out to something very similar. But based on our analysis of Vecna from what Steven has told us, I think that there were masters who were not the designers who asked for certain things as part of WoTC's strategic goals to be in the adventure, and this may be consistently true, that pushed and pulled the project in various ways. And here's a story from Paizo of an example of one time that this did happen, and then Paizo's adventure team was like, this was the problem, we're not going to do that again, and then they didn't do it again. Wrath of the Righteous is an adventure path with a really cool story. But many people have said online that the mechanics of it fell down due to the fact that it was using the mythic rules.
Yeah.
And the mythic PCs were drastically too powerful for the expectations of what was in the books.
I love Mythic Adventures, by the way. It was like one of my favorite PF1 books.
It's such a fun concept. There are like a few things in there that are math feats that like are much better than the ones that are the cool feats that should be mythic. Sure. That cause some issues, but with house rules on it to like don't take those or change those, it's just got so many cool ideas. But the problem was there were a lot of masters on that Wrath of the Righteous adventure path, because the World Wound was a huge like Chekhov's gun in the setting. For people who don't know about the World Wound in Pathfinder, is like a demonic area that a huge cataclysm filled up with demons. And they were at risk of spilling out until ward stones were trapping them in there, and there was a demon lord involved. It was a big deal. So A, that was a big Chekhov's gun that was always important to the setting, and B, it was like a super high level adventure for the first time, and C, it used the Mythic Adventures rules. It had several more masters than that. I wasn't at Paizo at the time, but Paizo's even come out and said that it had too many masters, and one of them was getting coordination with the Mythic rules, which were launched at the same time. And that was a problem, because you don't have your rules finalized fast enough for the authors to use them, or certainly not to analyze them deeply by that point in time. And so after that, Paizo decided not to try to have too many masters where everything had to be like perfectly coordinated like that. There was even a organized play gear that was coordinated. Everything was coordinated back then. And I think that the problem is that Wizards probably either hasn't learned that lesson, or they have some people who know that lesson, but they maybe don't listen to those people. And they're just like, well, it doesn't matter. Maybe even the corporate people are like, we get you. We hear you. We know it's going to compromise some of the quality authors when you tell us this. We know that it's going to make some people online give it somewhat bad reviews, but our sales are fine. And it's doing our 4 corporate goals. So the one goal of being lauded by everyone as a great adventure is not as important as these other 4. Like, that's a possibility too, where they acknowledge but then move through anyway. But I think that is likely a huge influence on it, because look how the page space was spent in Vecna. They had to do so many levels and so many worlds to show these places in the multiverse that, lo and behold, are connected to this new book we found out about today.
Yeah, I mean, I'll follow up that reasonable take with a hot take if you're ready
go
for it. So the problem is you.
Is me?
Not you specifically, but
the player, the reader?
the audience. Because let me tell you, because I see this all the time. In fact, I've seen this in the chat today, right? Which is basically two groups of people, sometimes the same people, go, oh, these WoTC adventures are you have to just do so much work yourself, and I can't believe how much you have to do, and like I just want it to work right out of the box, and I don't want to have to do anything. And then the same people or different people go, this game, it's so railroady and it's so linear, and it's just like you have to do exactly what it says or it doesn't work. It's like, well, guess what? You can't have both. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like you can't. There's a limit to a structure to how much story that you could put into a game and have it just basically work straight down the line, and you go from breadcrumb to breadcrumb to breadcrumb to breadcrumb. And if you want that, and that's what you're looking to buy out of a book, then yeah, you're going to give up flexibility. And if the party decides to start doing something differently, or the adventure seems like it's focusing on a linear path, it's because that's what you asked for. And so then when they, God forbid, dare do something different, and people actually have to, like, be a dungeon master and, like, to make decisions, then people throw up their arms and they're like, what's the use of this thing? It's garbage. I have to do so much work. I paid $55 for this thing. It should do everything. It should also make me a pizza and get me a beer. And it's like, nope, that's not the way it works. Sorry.
Well,
like you either get a 30-page module that has a gigantic island and this huge area that you have to explore and this massive, and then you have to do a shitload of work yourself, or you get something that holds your hand and takes you through the whole story and make sure you get your cool moments and everything like that. And you give up flexibility and your ability to do stuff.
So wait,
you can sort of have both, but there's a third element, which is page count, and you can't have all 3.
Right. Yeah, you're right. You could have infinite things, but it'd be a 1,000-page book, and
Well, I'm going to go through. Let me go through and finish what I was saying, because you have 2 types of adventures. You have the first type, which were the literally 30-page overview dungeon adventures that you, the dungeon master, really had to do a lot of the work, and that's what a lot of the original first edition modules were. You have the era of the Dungeon Magazine 2nd, 3rd edition modules, which really started to get better and better, and really had to have a magazine format and had to be interesting to read, and not just run, but read as well. And that's kind of where Paizo adventures are at now. Is that they're this beautiful combination of adventure, lore, story, everything in one in an adventure path. And then you have the D&D adventures, which seem to be... Is that my adventure?
No.
Oh, no, that's the Lumbering Sword. The Slumbering Sword. I had that one's insane.
Yeah, there's 1,000 pages.
Well, I'll get to why that is in a second. Oh, but so then you have the D&D adventures, which they're trying to.
When you say D&D, you mean 5e, right?
Because there are other ones you compare adventures.
Mark, by the way, just real quick, 1,000 pages and.
What?
Yeah, $150.
$150 cover MSRP.
Oh, I can't see it. But yeah, okay. So, by the way, but yeah, well, that's an old adventure. That would be $250 now. There's a fascinating Twitter, which I'm gonna just put out into chat right now, where was it Mark Holmes, Sherlock Holmes? Yeah, he has a fairly popular channel. He did an unofficial question on Twitter. 4,046 people voted on this, and this was just the other day, May 17th. And he said, when you play D&D, what do you mostly play? 14.8% said pre-written campaigns. 58.9% said homebrew worlds and stories. 22.8 said canon settings with homebrew. So 15%, we'll just round it. 15% run campaigns that are pre-written, and almost 60% have homebrew worlds and stories.
I don't believe that those statistics reflect the population of most.
Neither do I. I would be extremely skeptical of some random Twitter / X poll.
Only because the people that are most likely to follow this person are the type of self-pompous people who would never dare play some pre-written adventure. And of course, I have to write my own campaign. So it's going to naturally self-select for people. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing that, by the way. I'm just saying these are the type of people who really want you to know that they wrote their own campaign and they didn't just use something that somebody else published, because that would reflect poorly on my ability to be a wannabe author.
So I'm going to take Derik's hot take and agree with him mostly, while making it a little bit less hot, which is, forget about whether someone's self-pompous or not. The number of people who are actually on RPG social media, Twitter, X, whatever, and taking polls, regardless of who they're following, are not necessarily representative of the majority of casual players who would never go to there.
Right.
Whatever their attitude is about the game. And so I really think it's going to be unreflective, because it's going to be very, very into it people.
So, right, because the people who are going to use a pre-written campaign are typically people who are maybe not as familiar with the game, they're newer to it, or people who don't have a lot of time. Well, guess what? If you're responding to RPG Twitter, then you probably are familiar with the game, and you probably do have a lot of free time on your hands. So that's why I feel like that the thing is,
someone said to do the chat, so I'm going to poll the chat.
Says Lord of the Unfinished Project in a super chat.
I'll poll the chat with the same.
Also,
questions.
people could be pretty. I've seen a lot of people be very, very.
Steven, make sure to give them that they don't play D&D in there, so that they have something that they can
I'm doing
answer
the exact same. No, I'm doing the exact same.
Exact same one. Okay.
I'm just copying it.
I've also seen that there's a lot of people who are very cavalier with their definition of a homebrew campaign. Like I'll see this all the time, where people will be like, "Oh, I'm running a homebrew version of Rise of the Rune Lords."
So the third one, he said, a canon setting with homebrew is Forgotten Realms, Eberron, Dark Sun. But with a story written by the DM themselves, not an official adventure.
Got it. Okay. So that's where you're playing in a Forgotten Realms, an Eberron, a Kryn, but you're just making shit up. Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
So now here's the thing. Now, you were saying that is a 1,000-page book. I'm going to show you something that we did here that Paizo does. We have this adventure
take a
here.
Look, Steven. We are having pre-written campaigns winning right now.
Oh, I know. And I have this. You see, these two are meant to go together, and you add these up, and suddenly you have...
It's getting close.
Yeah, it's getting close to 1,000 pages.
Not there, but it's getting close.
Right. And by the way, my answer
so funny? This is so weird. I'm looking at this book. I was like, what's going on? This is the dummy copy, so it's totally blank. I'm like, oh no! Did we send out blank copies? I was like, crap. I'm insane. Here we go. This is... Here, do math, Mark. What's 280 plus 420? That's not that hard, but...
That's not hard at all. It's 700. It literally adds up evenly.
Wait, 700? 420 plus 280?
Yes.
Wait, did I say 200?
It's 700. You said 280 and 420. That is what you said. I don't know if that's actually their length.
So we have about 700 pages here, Derek.
All right.
And this was designed on purpose so that if you want the adventure, you have the adventure. If you want to know more about the world that the adventure takes place in, you have this, and then you can use this to either expand this adventure or make your own adventures in this world. We kind of tried to do a little bit of both, which is, by the way, is what Paizo does. It's the exact same model. And
produce the Lost Omen book and then release the AP that supports that Lost Omens book.
Right. Everyone, that's the way you're supposed to do it. Or in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this, so my option to this poll, by the way, is canon setting with homebrew. Most of what I have played in my D&D career has been in Greyhawk, a lot of Forgotten Realms, a lot of Kryn, right? When I played Earth Dawn, we played in Bar Save. So I've usually, when I play Legend of the Five Rings, I play in Rokugan. So most of my game world, and certainly when I've played in Pathfinder, it's usually been some variant of Golarion. But I will say that that's where the structure of these older modules is so appealing to me, because they're just designed to just be plug and playable, right? They're designed to be dropped into an existing game, because the original concept was that the idea was that every player was going to have their own campaign, or every GM was going to have their own campaign.
So, by the way, so still finally got to the answer that I was getting at, is that I feel that the new adventures that are being written by WoTC and released are trying to put 700 pages of stuff into a 256 page book, and they're just,
well, I think that's true.
They're just that's why they always seem like they're very incomplete books, because and everything I always see is like, this book's great, I only have to spend 2 weeks updating it to make it work, you know, I'm like, that's a good one, you know, or it's like, oh, I need a few hours per week to update it. I'm like, shouldn't these be kind of plug and play? You know, shouldn't you release the adventure to be standalone and then a book of lore separate? Why are you trying to combine three things into one, and all of them done poorly?
Well, because you're getting to another thing here, which is, and we did get a super chat, by the way, which I actually completely agree with the second part of it. Mr. Bandana Head said, was for $20, by the way, said, sorry for the tangent, but any advice on adapting pre-existing media into RPG adventures, wanting to adapt Crawl into an adventure? My advice would be, probably don't do it, because you get sued. But
well,
for
yourself,
a published adventure, but maybe he's just trying to run it for yourself. Mr. Bandana has running it for his home group.
Yeah.
Okay. In that case,
I much prefer Crawl.
All right. By the way, there should be a T-shirts for Steven that say WoTC for president to wear at Gen Con. I would rock that shirt. If there was like a Glicker for president, I would rock that shirt. I might make that design, Steven. I'm going to try. I've got a couple weeks left. I'm trying to get some T-shirts made for Origins.
That would be great. I would love that. I would love that.
I might try to see if I can do this.
You know, the guy who did the Obey shirt you remember the Obey, and it was Andre the Giant, and then he did the shirts for Obama, which was the Hope shirt. I forgot his name. He's a famous artist. My brother went to college with him, so we can have one that just has my face like that. I
mean, at this point, you could probably just have
I know
Mid-Journey or something do it for you. But
yeah, I know. Yeah, don't do that. I get in trouble. It's like, or maybe that's the way they want to go. Who knows? But the point is,
you know what? You're right. Let's get the guy who did the Obama posters to do our Joke Steven T-shirt for Gen Con.
My brother knows them.
Oh, doesn't mean he's going to do it for free. You know, what is with people assuming that because you're a friend of somebody that they should do it for lower cost? If anything, you should do it for more cost because they're your friend and you want to support them in their artistic endeavors.
I didn't say he was going to do it. I can ask him. Maybe he has a friend of a friend, and then I can do it in the style.
But going back to what you were talking about before.
Yep.
The reason is because, like, about the inconsistency of these books is because they, you know, we talked about masters serving. Mark was talking about serving multiple masters, and I think he was. I'm, you know, I mean, I assume you mean like corporate masters and other people with different ideas.
And marketing masters, different people on different levels who are not all the creatives who are just like my thing. They come to a meeting, maybe it's a planning meeting, and you know the creatives are there, or maybe the Calbrink level, who's above the creatives, are there, and they're just like, okay, guys. I love what you're bringing this energy to it, but what I need is this one thing that will energize the 28 to 34 bracket of whatever this thing is, and therefore it has to do this. And then once you get like 4 or 5 of those people with a mandate on it, it can sometimes make enough restrictions on you that you wind up in a situation where you can't just do what you wanted to do. Page count can be part of that. Right? Like, absolutely. If they were told, look, we're doing this thing with however many it was, like 9 different worlds in the multiverse, different universes and worlds and settings. We need you to showcase all of those.
Right.
And we won't give you more pages. This is how many you have.
Right. You have to fit it in.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way,
but I think sorry, but I just want to finish. Yeah, but like, I think that part of that mastery is also, like, the marketing element is specific to who is buying this book. There is no doubt in my mind, and Steven, you alluded to this. Okay, this module, okay, is designed for one thing only. Okay, to be a you know, it's, you know, you ever see, like, I can't remember the old saying, but it's like, a true craftsman's tools are never in good shape. You know what I mean? Like, if you go to like like a welder or a carpenter, if their shop isn't dusty, what's going on. So this was designed to be a tool to be used at the table during play to facilitate play. But now so many people are buying adventures. Hell, they're buying systems, and they have no intention of ever running that game. And they are buying it just for the fun and the pleasure of reading it. And like you said, Stephen, almost imagining what it would be like to play through the adventure. You will not get that with this. In fact, if you read this, you're going to come away. In fact, I would say that on paper, this is terrible, right? This Isle of Dread does not exist in my hands. It doesn't exist in anyone's possession. Isle of Dread is just a meta concept that this facilitates that then becomes real only when it is played. Whereas these adventures that are written in sort of a story, sort of novelized story fashion have essentially it's half book, half adventure, half lore book, it's just trying to like appeal to all these different people. Like, I'll give you a great example. This is something that just personally annoys me. The back 30 pages of every single Paizo adventure path book. Here's a new archetype. Here's a new monster. Here's a new, a couple random magical items. I didn't buy that for this. I bought this so that I could have the adventure. You should have given me 20 more pages of adventure. But they're thinking, well, yeah, but not everybody's going to run this adventure. And maybe they want some new information about the lore about this goddess, or maybe they want a new archetype to go along with it, even if it is pretty, focused on this particular adventure.
In theory, and I know that it has not been always done in practice, but in theory, best practices at Paizo is that those things in the back matter should be things that are heavily tied to getting them in the adventure. Magic items that are found as special rewards in the adventure that you wouldn't have found otherwise because they were added in there, or new creatures that the author needed to fill in the niche and the level of the monsters in that adventure that you can encounter for the first time ever in the adventure. That has not always happened in practice. And Derik, I am with you on the here's some arbitrary monsters that are way different level, way too low level to use here that we just kind of decided to put in there. But I think it's very effective to put in new content if it's in the adventure, if it's tied to the adventure.
And I don't disagree with you. I mean, this is where we get into like the chicken and the egg scenario. Is that monster there because it has to be there? And like the designer was like, I absolutely need this weird Fey monster for my adventure, or it just won't come together. God forbid I just use a dryad or a nymph or any of the other classic monsters that are already in the bestiary that you've bought. No, I specifically need this monster. And then it's like, okay, you're going to put it in the book back. Or is it that you're told, well, make sure you include 2 to 3 original monsters so that we can pad out the back of the adventure with additional stuff.
I mean, it's not to pad out. They would it'd be much easier to make it shorter.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, no, I'm not saying make it shorter. I'm just saying, give me more adventure. Give me more options. Give me more meat on the bones. Well, again, it's all I'm trying to say is that those adventure path books, and that's an adventure, really is kind of half. It's like 70% adventure, 20% bestiary, 10% lore. It's dabbling in a lot of different areas.
But if you don't have custom stat blocks, because even the 70% that is adventure also has sometimes custom stat blocks in there for NPCs or villains who don't go in the back bestiary. And if you don't have custom stat blocks, you could do that, but it's kind of not always as interesting to be like, yeah, okay, this is another encounter with dryads, I guess. We've already fought those before. I thought there might be something that was unique to this special autumn copes that we were going into.
And obviously
dryads that just have an autumn leaf color. And
obviously I'm biased there because me, I don't like bestiaries, but sure. But yeah, again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that format. I'm not. And I get that there's a lot of people who like that stuff. That's great. All I'm saying is now the adventure has to serve a bunch of different purposes as opposed to just being a tool for playing the adventure.
So by the way, I believe it's the adventure Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, was legendary for this, is that the adventure was written, and there's a lot of stories of this, is that they just added Baldur's Gate after it was done, and they had to completely just fit it in. And there's a lot of stories. I don't know these as well, so I can't quote, But I was listening to some YouTube channels. They were going to detail some of the writers of these, saying that, like, oh yeah, it was finished, and then marketing wanted to get Baldur's Gate in there because of a game or something, and then we literally just had to rewrite the whole last third and just squeeze it in there, and it totally is a mess. That's the difference, I think, because these adventures being created by WoTC have so many different people. There's too many cooks. That's it. Too many cooks. It's just like the people writing the adventure, and then marketing almost sees it after it's completely written and says, you forgot like these 10 things. Sorry, we should have told this to you before you wrote the adventure. Get it in there now. And it's like, come on, really? And then it ends up being a total freaking mess. And I see this happen in my day job all the time. Like, we'll design a website, and then someone, I mean, we're better at this now, but back when we really started out, is like marketing or someone would come around and say, oh, you forgot this whole area, or you need to get this in there. And it's like, it's designed for 5 sections. It's like, yeah, well, we need 7. It's like, it's not designed for 7. It literally only can hold 5. They're like, we'll get it in there. And then you end up breaking the design. It ends up being a mess. And then it just feels off. And
right. The clients are always changing things and demanding things. This is what it's like to be someone who is at the stage of the process where you're not in control. And I mean, can you imagine how frustrating it probably is for some of the creators, for some of the authors, because, you know, like, they're professional and probably also have specific agreements where they couldn't do it anyway, even if they weren't professional. They're not going to say anything about this most of the time. They're just going to be quietly saying nothing, and people will see their name in there and be like, and they'll be like, to use Steven's example, I'm not completely familiar with the story, but I did hear rumors also that Baldur's Gate was just tacked on to a Hell story just because it was Baldur's Gate, and to be like, well, we tried to make a cool Hell story, and Baldur's Gate just got tacked on at the end, like, and now everybody's saying these things. Like, it must be really, like, demoralizing.
Well, not only that, here's the crazy part is I'm looking at Amazon. Every one of these adventures, 5 stars. It's not even 4.5.
That's what I was getting back to, right? When I said that
stars.
The marketing people might have been like, maybe the authors tried to say, hey, look, we're getting reamed for this somewhere. And maybe they were like, well, we're 5 stars on Amazon. We're doing fine. Yeah, we'll get reamed in social media and some YouTube channels about this occasionally, but it's not actually hurting our sales. So we're good.
Right. I mean, that's the end of the day. That's the real litmus test, right? Are people buying these books? I mean, maybe that's the other side of it too. Like, traditionally, right, adventures always did very poorly for TSR back in the day. Like, they were not sellers.
Well, guess what? They still do. They actually still do poorly. That hasn't changed. The thing is that this is what I don't understand. I don't understand what WoTC is doing, because they keep releasing adventures. Why?
Well, they release like adventure campaign settings. It's really weird. Like, they did that for Dragonlance. Right. They did that for Spelljammer.
It's like,
they
who
did
is
that
this for? Because I hate to say that's still 100% true. It's 100% true. Adventures do the worst when it comes to sales.
But if you don't have them, it can hurt your game overall.
No,
if it's
you need
too
them.
Sparse. If
Correct.
It's too sparse.
You need them to help your game. But that seems to be all they release. And I thought they were going to be doing kind of what they used to do. When 5th edition first came out, and I was really excited, you know, back in 2014, it was like, oh, we're going to have adventures, and we'll have campaign settings. They're going to do what they always did and have the splat books. But it's like, oh, an adventure, cool. An adventure, cool. An event, like, that's all they're doing. I'm like, this is it? You're literally just putting out adventures? Like, okay, like, where's the new player guides? Like, where's the new play? You know, like, they just never did it. They just keep coming out with adventures. And then the most ironic thing is that the few books that came out that actually have new rules are by far their most popular and beloved books. Like Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, like all those books. People love those books. I was like, you would think you might want to put out a few more of those books, because obviously people like them. And I imagine, I mean, I'm not going to look at BookScan, but I imagine they sell better than the adventures sell, because anything player facing, everyone can buy. You know, it's like,
you already looked at BookScan, and they did sell better than the adventures sold. Back when we looked at it the last time, I remember the numbers. They definitely did.
Yeah. So why wouldn't you keep doing that?
Well,
And I don't know why.
there's a lot of reasons that you can get into for that. It uses a different skill set and amount of sort of design and interfacing with playtests than the adventures is one reason. Two is a chicken and egg, where the scarcity also helped them to sell more because it was like water in a desert. At that time, they weren't releasing very many books at all when some of those books came out, and it was the first one, or the first one will always sell better. Whereas when there are more adventures, your sales get dispersed among those other adventures. So there are a variety of reasons. I want to get to a super chat that we skipped a while back. It's not really super related, but it is a super chat, which from Tiger Eye said, Steven, I'd love you as WoTC president. I'm not sure whether you'd win or be adopted into their culture, and we'd lose you as outside gaming news.
Oh,
we'd gain him as an insider force for the good of all things role-playing game. And think about it. Promises ring out from this place. The new edition of Dungeons & Dragons will be like Talisman.
That'd be great. The Talisman world will be one of our books. They own it. They own Talisman. We could do that. Hasbro owns it. That'd be fantastic. I don't know. I actually have a couple of, I won't share these with you, but I actually have a whole bunch of ideas of how to turn D&D into $1 billion brand while keeping the game will remain the same. If anything,
Can't
it'll
do
be
it.
better. Oh, it can be done. I figured it out.
Can't do it.
Oh,
Can't
yeah,
be done.
figured it out.
Can't be done.
Oh,
It can't be done.
Totally
Can't be done.
figured it out.
Can't be done. I bet you $1 billion.
It can be. Totally figured it out. If I won't spoil it, but if I ever get in front of the board, I'll lay it all out. And
Shout
they
out.
hire me. I have it. I have it all laid out.
I will say shout out to Tony, $10 super chat, because I agree with him, but I'm also a little bit torn. Tony says, honestly, a revised DMG would be great if they could just put the important stuff near the front instead of first decide on your gods.
Well, they did do that supposedly.
And
yeah,
the 2024 is supposedly doing that.
Yeah,
That's
they
good.
totally redid that.
I will say that you're absolutely right. And people should be taught how to game master and dungeon master first, right? You should learn how to walk before you learn how to run. That being said, I grew up in a time and a place where, like, part of the graduation process, I suppose, if you will, of being a real DM was this idea of, crafting your own milieu, and having your own set of countries and pantheons and religion, and all this other structure. And I still think that there's a place for that. But honestly, I don't think it should be in like the absolute core DMG. Like the core DMG has a much bigger ask to do. And I think part of the problem with the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide in particular, this is something I've talked about a lot on my channel. Almost everybody I know, and again, I'm 40 years old, learned D&D from somebody else. Right. And a lot of the dungeon mastering skills were learned at the apron strings of a dungeon master who had come before you, right? And could trace a lineage back, to 1981, and could trace a lineage further back to the depths of Lake Geneva. And so a lot of the skills of dungeon mastery came from this oral tradition. And so the Dungeon Master's Guide was just like the tables and the raw component information that you needed to do all the minutia. It didn't actually teach you how to be a dungeon master. And I think a lot of the modern DMGs, ironically, 4th edition Dungeon Master Guide did a great job of this, of actually sitting down and saying, like, we're going to explain it to you like you've never played D&D before, and you're buying this game for the first time ever. And that's because 4th edition D&D, yes, 4th edition D&D, the most hated edition of Dungeons & Dragons all the time because everyone is an idiot, was designed to target non-role players. It was designed to say, hey, are you a video game player? Do you play World of Warcraft? Do you enjoy elves and dragons and swords? Maybe you'd like to come play Dungeons and Dragons. 4th edition was aimed at that market. 5th edition was absolutely not aimed at that market. I don't care what anybody says. I will not be convinced of that. 5th edition, to me, was aimed at old grognards who felt like they had been left by the wayside, and it was sort of a mea culpa, and here's sort of a cleaned up classic edition of Dungeons and Dragons with dungeons and dragons and treasure and like, we don't worry about the balance and all the math, and it just feel it out like an old school day. 5th edition was not designed, in my opinion, the Game Master, the DMG was not designed to be pointed at a person who literally has never played the game before, or they saw Mike and Will playing it on Stranger Things, and now they want to be a DM. And it's like, okay, well, that's a very different ask than what the Dungeon Master Guide is presuming.
I think that you almost made your argument like the 15th word in when you said that making those deities and making those entire settings was a graduation right for any GM. You're right. And you don't put graduation before the classes.
That's
Yeah, but
right.
they've even admitted that the DMG, the 5e DMG is terrible. It's horribly organized. It's like, I don't know.
It has some good things in it. It does.
But everything has good things in it, but it doesn't mean
no. It
like,
has good sections, but the order is
no. The order is atrocious. It is, and they admit they come out and say it the whole time. Like, we don't know what we're thinking. Like, I don't know what was going on there. But anyhow, wait. We have.
We got one more super chat that said
they.
No, I think that Derik actually covered Tony's like along the way.
Oh.
So we have one from Lord of the Unfinished Project, unless I missed another one that said they need player's guide to Magic worlds like Lost Omens. Well, there was a Theros.
Wait, there was Tiger Eyes. There was Tony. And
I did Tiger Eyes.
What about Tony?
I will say,
and Derik did Tony.
Oh, right, he did.
As a random aside, Lord of the Unfinished Projects. I don't know if you mean for TTRPGs or if you just mean MTGs. But like, it's really always been bothering me because the people at Hasbro at WoTC, they create these incredible world Bibles for each of the campaigns that they're working on, and it's filled with lore and sketches and art, and it's like this incredible internal resource document that the diviners and the developers can use in order to create cards and stuff and flavor text and all, and they use it, and it never gets published. It's crazy to me that they build this awesome internal story Bible and then they don't publish it or clean it up or edit it and give it to people, because you're absolutely right. I would buy that for, well, maybe not every set nowadays because some of them are a little wonky, but back in the days of 3 set blocks and 2 set blocks, I would have absolutely bought that for Amonkhet, for Kaladesh, for Innistrad, for, Zendikar, for Tarkir, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Imagine if they made it a special collector's edition. They'd be like, look, inside the WoTC office, normally only we have these world Bibles, but we're making a very limited number of them for X high amount of money. You probably would have bought some of those for your favorite sets.
Well, first of all, you would never get them because that's actually what Games Workshop does, and no one gets anything that they publish because all the scalpers buy them and then resell them for like $2,000. So,
well, we can't fix every evil of society.
Yeah, that's already happening. By the way, a lot of people think I would get corrupted if I went over there. I ain't done that. I'm a lot tougher than you think. Trust me on that one. And I deal with Fortune 500 companies and presidents and boards and CEOs all the time. You'd be surprised what I've had to put up with in my life. So it takes a lot more than one board and CEO to push me around.
I think that people can have more confidence in Steven because of the fact that Steven is sort of like a businessy guy who is like anti-corrupted or whatever it is. He's corrupted in the other way where he'll be like, I want to do the businessy thing. But then what he actually does in the end sometimes is just like add more pages or make better content. Because he just wants to make a good product and he wants to get out stuff that people love, like in his heart of hearts. So at the last minute, that's what steers his ship.
Yeah. I don't think I would get corrupted. By the way, someone asked what would happen to the roll for combat stuff and the Pathfinder stuff if this weird thing happens. Derik could take over roll for combat.
You realize he'd abolish.
My laugh is an evil laugh.
Now
he'd abolish like everything, Steven.
I know
he'd be like,
would.
no more ancestries. Yeah. Everything is a human.
Yeah,
we're an alpha at most.
Then the next adventure, the extinction curse. Except it's like affecting all non-humanoid ancestors.
We had Year of Monsters and Year of Legends, but now. The Year of Derik.
The year
have 12
of Derik.
ancestries. All of them are human.
Year of the generic humanoid.
The year of
sales go through the roof.
The year of generics. Yes. Every month it's a different type of human.
So
look, we got someone who hates you, Derik. Just joined. Derik as guest. Hard pass. refuse to gross bullies. Maybe next time.
Namaste, my friend. Namaste.
Derek is such not a bully.
I know.
Have you met me?
Listen, this just shows you the dynamic that content creation can sort of relate to.
Yeah.
I will say, somebody in chat, I missed their name, Sketchosaur Rex, was like 4E DMGs were that good, and actually I do think they are, and that almost gives me inspiration, Sketchosaur Rex, to maybe do a stream series where I basically just go through the 4E DMG and the 4E DMG 2, because they were both excellent, incredibly excellent books. Even, I mean, yes, there are parts of it that if you're not playing 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, it doesn't really have much impact to you, but it is surprisingly good advice even for that type of things.
It's always tricky to figure out what you're going to do when it comes to like GM related content in your GM book. And how you name that first chapter, how you frame that first chapter, it's tough. When we came to the Game Master Guide for Pathfinder 2nd edition, for example, we gave some advanced GMing techniques that are still, because the very basics were in the core rulebook. This is before the remaster. And somehow, despite the design lead, the edit lead, and everybody else being lined up on that first chapter being called something else, it got renamed at the last minute to GM Basics, which it was not. And then a bunch of people were like, I don't want to buy this book. Look how high of a percentage of it was Basics, which it wasn't. So you can see that it's actually a very big question and a very big issue for GMing books, because in fact, Derek, you're correct that those early sections that give some kind of advice are highly useful for a big percentage of people, but they can also turn off people who assume themselves to be experts already and are just like, well, then I don't need it at all.
Yeah, I could see that. I actually can see that.
You have to frame it right.
But that's the beauty, I think, of the 4th edition model, which they didn't really expand on. But the idea is like, you know how we have multiple players handbooks and we have advanced players guide, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, here's the Game Master Guide. Here's the advanced Game Master's Guide, right? Like, why can't we continue to develop books that help GMs out? And instead of just focusing constantly on players, let's actually, because games don't happen without a GM. So, at the end of the day, I mean, if there's a problem with even the D&D 5e adventures, it's ultimately a DM problem, right?
By the way, okay, so Phoenix Guard, you get 100 hero points, because my favorite Rorschach quote from The Watchmen is, Steven isn't locked in there with WoTC. WoTC is locked in here with me. Now in this case, am I envisioning that there is an OGL person who is covered in boiling oil and dying, and then you're going to go stalk to the offices of Hasbro and you're going to viciously murder them in a bathroom? Because that's what happens in that scene. No, that's the scene. That's the scene in the cafeteria where he takes the pot of boiling oil and throws it in the guy's face, and
then like a couple days later they break him out and there's like a prison riot. But then before he leaves,
he's like, "Oh, I got to go to the bathroom," and they look at him, and then he goes kills the guy.
That the scene though with the door swinging open.
I know.
Oh, good.
The cinematography. I just saw that movie again. A couple times. It's been on cable recently. That movie is so ahead of its time. It's like when it came out, it got lambasted. Okay, the acting isn't great. The makeup is terrible. The old people makeup is atrocious. It's a little wooded in parts, but it is still great. It is very well done. The story is excellent, and the new ending I think is superior than the comic. Like much
absolutely
better.
Absolutely. I don't want to spoil anything, but I 100% agree with you there, because I had read the comic and so I was kind of like, oh, and then I was like, oh, I like this ending a lot better.
That ending is way better. It's actually a much better, more cohesive ending than the comic. Way better.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff.
Tiger Eyes
with another $5. Stephen WoTC president. Mark is contracted with WoTC and cannot write PF2E ever or R again. Derek takes over RFC. Oh God. It would be a disaster of the highest proportion. Of all the things that I am not qualified to do, and there are many, running a gaming publishing company would have to be near the top of the list.
It is so complex. It is. There's so many things I am dealing with on a daily basis. It's like it's like I'll be dealing. I should do a show on that, like what I do, because I'm dealing with the printers, I'm dealing with the artists, I'm actually talking with one of the Foundry developers, and we got a lot now. We're up to like 5 developers for Foundry alone, and I'm also doing a Fantasy Ground module and planning our next Kickstarter. It's like there's just like it's a lot going on.
Yeah, do it. Do that episode just like the shipping episode. I think that being someone who is publishing this much stuff while also having a YouTube channel, there aren't a lot of people who publish this many books and have a YouTube channel who can describe the process in the same way.
And at the scale and size of that you guys actually are,
yes.
Which is, I'm talking with 100% of the Roll for Combat staff, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have a huge, like, and this is how my company is structured. We have, like, if you add up all of our freelancers, including our contractors, including the artists, and it's like 50. I mean, we have a lot of contractors. So.
Sure. Well, the art doesn't make itself.
No, I know. And I have even more now. In fact, we're doing the art for the Battlezoo Strange Unusual, for Elemental Storm. And for the first time ever, the first book I had like 6 artists or 7. I didn't have that many because I was starting out, and it took forever. I mean, it seemed like it just took forever to get the art done. And then for the last book, I had more artists, and it was going pretty fast. This one, I have something like 25 artists, so I'm like, okay. And I just gave everyone like 2 pieces of art, and they're like just cranking through it. I was like, oh my God, it's like in 6 weeks, the book's over, like almost all the art's done. I was kind of surprised. I was like, holy crap, I forgot how much to scale you can get. But it took me 3 years to find that many good artists. You know, it takes a long time. My dog wants to come in. Discuss it amongst yourselves.
Perf Jenkins says, I think DM exclusive resources would never get picked up by players, so why would WoTC make them? And you've kind of hit the nail on the head, Perf, which is this. Fundamentally, I believe that RPGs, I mean, obviously we now have into solo RPGs and full collab RPGs, but for the most part, RPGs live and die on the strength of the game master. And as much as the game companies would love for this not to be the case, okay, and they understand that, right? That's the limiting factor. That's the limiting reagent. That's the bottleneck. And in a sense, actually, it's even worse than that, because that GM or that DM who picks up and runs a game for a bunch of people who could potentially become future customers, they are essentially like acting as your marketing arm.
They're a brand ambassador.
Yeah, they're a brand ambassador, exactly. And you have like no control over them, right? So like that's a very scary thing, to put the future of your product's growth in the hands, because you could market all you want D&D to players, but at the end of the day, when they sit down to play the game, they're going to have to be doing it through the lens of a game master or through a dungeon master. And so that bias and that skill and that whatever is all going to reflect in there. So that's a really tough situation to be in. So naturally, you want to support that person. You want to give that person as much tools as you can. But it's 1 person out of 6. So if you just market to the DM, you're not going to sell any books.
Yeah,
so
that's why adventures don't do well.
Yeah.
Right? And so from a business perspective, it makes sense to ignore the GM. But from like a business game perspective, it totally doesn't make sense to ignore the GM. So what the hell?
Completely.
That's why they're trying to get rid of. That's why they're trying to get rid of GMs.
Right? But,
well, no, right. The GM is the weak spot in their business.
Oh yeah, no, they're trying.
Pipeline.
Oh yeah, no.
Right, and totally. I think that's why you've seen. I think that's why you've seen 2 things. The first was, let's create cookie cutter adventures that no one could mess up. Right. That
I don't think that's what they've actually done.
Well, no, I don't think. I think they've failed. I mean, I'm just saying that I think the idea was this promise, which I think was a false promise. Buy this, and that's it. Just follow the pages. It'll come out perfect. You'll love it. You'll feel like Matt Mercer. And obviously, there's more to it than that. And so the people came back and said, I bought this, and it didn't make me into an incredible dungeon master. And my players said the adventure sucked. What happened? You guys sold me a bill of goods. So now the question is, okay, so how do we just get rid of this whole Dungeon Master thing entirely? And the fact that the Dungeon Master is the limiting reagent is also a great indication of why games like Ironsworn and Starforge and these solo RPGs, I think, have been gaining in popularity, because a lot of people are like, this is the factor of the game that I don't want to have to deal with.
Well, here's the worst part. You discussed that the GM might be 1 of 6 players, and that was already an issue, because if you sell only to 1 out of 6 players, that's very different than you have a product that's mostly to that one, but even 10% of the other people buy it, that's over 50% more money. But if the numbers are to be believed, even in some places like online forums where you would expect the most plugged in people like the GMs to be overrepresented, I think someone found it was like 50-1 players to GM ratio, or some not like 5e compared to other games actually has, and maybe even though you would think it would be biased towards more GMs, maybe that one, because of the way it worked out, was biased and it wasn't really 50-1. Maybe it's only 20, maybe it's only 10, and somehow it was off by a factor of 5. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, if it is 50-1, then you're really leaving money on the table if you don't put in anything that can that a player can get interested in, because there's 50 times as many people out there. Now, maybe of those 50, some of them never buy anything.
50-1 is insane, though.
Yeah, when I saw that the first time, I was like, what?
That's crazy. Like, how do you ever... Sheesh. Like, what are GMs having? Like, tryouts, to be in their game or something? Like, Jesus.
This was on a large, online forum where people self-tagged themselves as either a player or a GM. And if anything, I would think that based on that people would just not tag themselves as players sometimes if they just don't tag themselves as anything.
Yeah.
But I don't even know. That is not a scientific study that showed how many players each GM has to have, but it is definitely a lot.
I'm curious. I see, people in chat, as they always do, 5e has always had a GM problem. People don't enjoy running it, et cetera, et cetera. And I've always wondered about that. Now, I'm not GM the most 5e games ever, but I don't understand why people say it's hard to GM. You pick a DC between 10 and you pick a DC between 10 and 20. If somebody says something cool and has a good idea, you give them advantage. If it's bad, you give them disadvantage, and that's like it.
No, I mean, it's easy to do the basics.
Okay, what else is there beyond that, though?
Like having the encounters
balanced,
challenge the player.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about like Final Fantasy Tactics.
No, we're talking about if the issue is that without getting into a long diatribe that we could do an entire show on, is that because the game is so loosey-goosey, it becomes hard to GM. It's very hard to...
What does that mean, though?
The math is not tight.
Okay, that's what it means.
No, seriously, it's not tight. And when you have math that's that loose, you have very wild swings. And when you have very wild swings and you have players that are unpredictable...
Very wild swings in a game that uses random dice to determine damn near everything. God forbid.
Yeah, but the point is that players don't like that. And then players...
I know, which is the crazy... That you're 100% right, and I don't know why people are still playing the game, because you're absolutely right.
No, you're right.
Some players just want to play One Punch Man, and they're tired. Yeah. They've had a long week. They don't want the game to challenge and stress them. They just want to wipe everything out, and they're fine with it. But some players do want to challenge, and in that case, they kind of are saying, hey, GM... give us a challenge. What's going on here? And that's where the GMs find. Right. Players want this is actually very difficult to do.
It's very hard to do.
Players want a challenge. They're upset that the GM or the adventurer isn't providing a challenge. Meanwhile, they're playing their Sorkadin, which they downloaded from some forum post on Reddit, and are following the builds line by line. So it's like, which is it? I don't understand. Like,
I will say, I might do this as a top. Maybe I'll do a talk at Gen Con. I did a talk at PaizoCon a while ago, and I think I was on it with Linda, believe it or not, Mark. I don't know if you remember. This might have been like 2018. There was a talk at PaizoCon on GM tips and tricks that I was on. I can't remember who else was on it with me. And the whole talk was like, throw out your worst case scenarios, and we would tell you how to handle them.
It was Ask the GMs.
It was like, it was
called or something like that.
Yeah, it was one of those. And the thing is, like anything else in this world, you do it long enough. I've seen, and you've probably seen it all. It's really amazing. Like, there's there's a lot, like, that's what it's funny, because I'm listening to you guys talking about the books, and I've read these books, and I find these books, the GM books, okay.
Oh yeah,
but
they are no substitute for the real thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the questions they're asking were so obtuse, but I'm like, believe it or not, that's happened to me twice. And I think definitely was Linda on that talk, and I'll tell you why. Because the ones that really get you is run society. And you will see things you will see sights you can't it's like a Hellblazer.
They will haunt your dreams.
Exactly, the sights you will see that will haunt your dreams, things that will happen to you because you're playing with strangers. Amazing. And I used to do nothing but that, and I'm sure you have too, Mark. It's like when you're playing with strangers, you really get some oddities out there, and at this point, it's interesting because I do see that, and I'm not trying to say I'm the best GM in the world, but I probably have GM'd. God, I mean, if I do the math, it's probably, I know how often I GM. If I do 52 times 47.
I've been GMing for 31
Exactly.
years.
I probably have GM'd about 2,500 sessions easily.
Oh, sheesh.
Sessions. And that's probably about right. So when you do 2,500 sessions, you kind of seen it all. It's like it takes a lot to rattle me at this point. It takes a lot for me to figure it out. But I might want to do that, or we do a show on that. Just ask us anything.
So Tony had a super chat that one of their players wants to learn to be a GM, but doesn't want to start because he doesn't want to mess up, and that kind of failure anxiety is a pretty common roadblock. That is absolutely
100%
correct.
100% true.
And part of what can lead towards that failure anxiety this is actually something that I will speak back to Derik's question about what's so hard about a system where it's easy and loose.
By the way, we missed
some of the people who have failure anxiety. It depends completely on your personality type and the way your brain thinks through things. Are actually find it easier when things are more regimented and more well defined because they know they can fall back on that. Whereas when you just tell them, oh, anything was fine, the world is your oyster, just roll whatever check you're going to roll, and it'll all be okay. Sometimes their failure anxiety is like, no, it won't. What do I do specifically? I want to know what it is in advance so I can plan it out, so I can be ready. I'll make my spreadsheet. I'll have everything set. And you're like, you can't. It's just fine. Whatever they say, there's going to be a check, and you go through and just pick one, and you set the DC to probably 15. It's going to work out. And they even though in their heart of hearts, they might be like, Derik, I think you're right. But the anxiety part of my brain is not letting me agree to that. It's not going to ever give up until I have it all planned out.
Look,
the looser it is, the harder it is to satisfy that part of your failure anxiety.
I mean, it's funny because I ran, not even that long ago, I ran a 5e campaign for probably 6 months. So I don't know, 20 something sessions, give or take. And I never once, I still don't know. I actually do not know the 5e encounter building rules. I never looked them up once the entire time I played that campaign. It was all homebrew and made up stuff and whatever. I couldn't even begin to tell you. I could tell you with mathematical precision how to build a 3rd edition counter down to the nearest XP. Maybe I start losing a little bit after CR7, what the XP amount is. But for 5e, no clue. I have absolutely no idea. If I throw 12 kobolds at a level 2 party, is that balanced? No clue. I have no idea. And you know what? I didn't care. I'd be like, how many? They'd be like, how many ghouls are there? I'd be like, there's 4d6 because you guys fucked with the crypt. I'd roll them out in front of the thing. I'd be like, all right, there's 18 ghouls. All right, who's going first? And we would just go. I mean, I don't know. That to me was very freeing because everybody had told me, I'd heard online, oh, the 5e encounter building rules are shit. I was like, cool. That means I don't need to learn them and I could just ignore them. Sweet. Awesome.
By the way, one of the things I would say is if you're going to DM, I would make sure I would play with players that know that. So I was at a con recently, a couple of months ago, and I played Shadow Dark, and the guy who was DMing said, first he recognized me, and then I was one of his players, and this was the first time he's ever been to a convention and the first time he ever DM'd at a convention, so he was really nervous, and he said it, and we were all like, oh, it's cool, and just him saying that to us we made sure to put him at ease, as the players. And we were even helping him out at times. And became more of it's not an adversarial encounter where it's the DM versus players. It was like we're all working on this together, and he would ask us things and we would give suggestions. It was like we're all kind of DMing a little bit. He was still the DM, but we still would help, and it became he had a great time. We all had a good time. It was fun, and it was just a good experience. And that's something else, is like, don't feel like you actually have to be the dungeon master who knows everything. And if you listen to the very best dungeon masters, I think they all kind of do that. Like, they don't really sit there and just dictate this is the way things would be. I think that's kind of an old school methodology, the Gygaxian way. And the modern way is a little bit more like, we're in this together and we're all telling a story. And yes, I might be the lead narrator most times, being the DM, but sometimes the players becomes the lead narrator, sometimes they're in charge and the DM just sits back and listens, and then they just go with their story. It's almost like storytelling, back and forth.
You've run in a game that I ran, Steven. I'll be like, wow, your idea is way better than my idea. We're going with that. And it's like, okay, you're a way more creative, smart person than me. So let's go with that. And whatever idea I had, doesn't matter. Throw it away. Yeah. But you did hit on something which I think is really, really important. You talked about the fear of the GM, of the DM, and the anxiety of expectation and the adversarial nature of it. And I do think there's a reason for that. Okay. And here's why. And it's sort of like, how like they wanted people to go to college, so they offered these really awesome, amazing loans so that more people could go to college. And so then all the colleges raised their rates because now there were loans. And so now no one could go to college. It's like this, right? Like unintended consequence. So the dungeon master goes, I want to run this game, but I don't know how to. I'm a little bit afraid of it. And so then they go, well, here's this adventure. Okay. And it's well structured and it's well formatted and it's kind of breadcrumb, and it'll take you through the thing, and it has everything that you need to know. And that way you can keep it on the page. And the DM says, I'm going to spend my hard earned money on this adventure. I'm going to read the adventure. I'm going to learn from the adventure. And I'm a little bit apprehensive because I haven't really learned how to be a DM yet. I only know how to run this adventure, essentially. But D&D is essentially a hobby that is predicated on the idea that players are going to do and try and crazy shit. And so what ends up happening, I think, sometimes is, as a defense mechanism, Dungeon Master Guide or Dungeon Masters become adversarial, because when the players do what players do, which is, and they might not even be trying to troll the GM, they're just doing what they do. The DM sees it as an effort for them they're trying to derail it, or they're trying to make me lose out on the prep or the money that I spent on this adventure. And so the DM could naturally, I think, have because they're not comfortable to do anything else, they respond by being very, where I'm going to railroad you. I'm going to be somewhat adversarial. I'm going to tell you, no, that doesn't work. No, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing this. We're going to stay on the target because this is what I prepped and I don't know how to do anything else. And so then the player could come back and say, man, my GM's a dick and he won't let me do anything. And then and then you end up in this bad situation, because now the GM will never learn how to be a good game master, but the players are always going to feel like the GM's being a dick. And in reality, they're all just trying to get better, but there's no way to break out of that. And I think that's something that I've seen happen a lot of times where GMs are panicking because they don't know how to handle the game going off the rails, and they've invested so much time and money into these adventures or pre-written campaigns. They're very loath to get off of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's funny just because when we used to play, it was so adversarial, and I told you, like, we've gotten into such big fights, and some of my best friends I didn't talk to for years, and all because of freaking D&D. I mean, seriously, it was like, it's funny, we think about that, and it's the same group, it's the same guys I was playing with, for like 30 years now, and even now, like, we play, and we are just so relaxed. It's just like, oh, you want to do this? Okay, none of us care. Like, we're just so much more relaxed about this stuff, and I had
the kind of fights in, like, when I was a teenager with my players that you had, like, in your 20s.
Actually in my 30s. In my 30s. It wasn't in my 20s. It was, but we're New Yorkers.
You were grown-ass men with children.
We were. I think we were in our 40s, and we had those fights because we were in our 40s.
Right. You're right. It's the New Yorker.
It is. No, but now we've really gotten to the point that we joke about that. We're like, man, remember we used to, like, and that's a big part of it. I mean, we've talked about that, the whole social contract, but I think GMing has become Because if you read the old books and it was a very adversarial. Gary Gygax was like, the GM is God. The GMs, those are, whatever he says are the rules. There are no rules. Whatever they say is the rule, and it was just so different. And, for better or for worse, we grew up with that methodology, but we've kind of either through old age or just through playing together for so long, we've just sort of turned it into, as the GM, am telling you what's happening and telling the story, but we're all telling the story. It's like, you guys, whatever you want to do.
Well, and that's part of the reason why, over the last decade or more, honestly, at this point, Jesus, I have become more and more a fan of many of the games that you see on the shelf behind me are games that are from, Powered by the Apocalypse or other, Fate or other sort of indie-inspired, indie-esque games, because the games themselves, I know a lot of people who play their D&D 5th edition game practically no different than I would run my Fabula Ultima or my Fate or my Dungeon World game.
That's
but the difference is 5th edition explicitly isn't designed to support that style of play, whereas these games are. And I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It depends on, as long as you and your players have an understanding about how procedurals work. But it does come a point where you go, okay, well, what are we even doing here? Like, why are we still using this game engine in this game system if we're not, for example, this is a big bugaboo of mine. And it's one of my most annoying things. When a game goes, here's this really complex rule set, and we want your players to learn it, and we want you to make informed decisions about feats and ability score improvements and archetypes and whatever subclasses. But we're also going to say, but the rules don't matter, and your GM can change things whenever they want, and just have fun. Okay, which is it?
Right.
Which is it? Yeah. Is it balanced encounters, fair design with tight math, or is it just make it up and go with what the flow is? Yeah, everybody should have a good time. Which is it?
My
it can't be both.
No, my players don't like that. No, my players want rules. They want to know the rules. They want to know them by heart. Yeah. Like, no, because we like the fights. That's the thing. We have a kind of a weird mix because I don't like the light systems, but we can do both. Like when we're not playing and not killing each other and fighting, we can do the fun role play light system mechanics. But then when we get to the fights, they want to make sure it's by the rules, and they're using the carefully balanced built characters that they've built. And, they're really, but you can't have it both ways. That's how we play. By the way, we missed a super chat. Mr. Bandana Head, did we miss that one? Not for nothing. Watsy would probably buy Roll for Combat. If Steven became president, Steven and Mark would make bank. Well, yes, they probably would buy Roll for Combat. But anyhow, we got a new super chat. Cybersmith Videos, 20 pounds. Not fooling around there. Quick drop-in comment.
What's up, Cyber?
Oh, do you know him?
A patron of the Nice Last Call.
Oh, then you read this one.
Quick drop-in comment. This may be a tie to a thing I pondered a while ago about combat as sport versus combat as war. Spoken like a true Knights of Last Call patron. Simulation as call play, which in my opinion works well in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, requires freedom to change plans and maps, which is very hard in APs. I tend to agree that APs as an adventure path reward the experience. The experience is much smoother when the players do what they're supposed to do and they follow the rules and they try to do what the rules say. Whereas when you start talking about combat as war, right? Combat as war is where you go, all right, well, instead of attacking, there's a really cool fight on the other side of that door, and somebody spent a lot of time putting together a lot of cool monsters. Maybe it's a new monster from the back of the book in an appendix. And the players go, okay, well, what we want to do is go back to town and get some of those barrels. And then we want to make it into a poisonous gas mixture. And then we want to flood it because we know that room has like these air vents. And we're going to use stone shape spells to dig holes into the room. And then we're going to pump the noxious gas into the chamber. And that way everything will be dead and we won't have to fight anything. And when that happens in your game, you have reached the crossroads. And whatever decision you make from this point forward will be the Rosetta Stone upon which your game is balanced. Because you're either going to say, yes, everything dies, and no combat, no dice are rolled. It doesn't matter what feats you took. It doesn't matter what your magical items are. It doesn't matter how big your numbers are, go burr. They're all dead because you had an idea. Or the GM is going to say, no, that doesn't work. I spent way too much time prepping this encounter and buying these minis. We're fighting these fucking monsters.
Yeah, you could do
and
both.
So,
you could figure out a way to have it both ways. So.
It's very tough. Very tough.
Nah.
It's very tough.
No, it's not. I don't know.
And
I mean,
typically,
like,
and by the way, and when you do manage the two of them, you know what it typically comes down to? Just the GM fiat, just going, fuck it, whatever. I don't know.
Oh, that's exactly.
You know, it's getting late, and I didn't really want to fight this combat anyways.
Well, that could happen too. This just happened in my game. Is that there's a store they wanted to break into to fight this big bad, and the adventure was written in such a way that you go through like the series of traps and stuff, and then you get to the final boss. But then they said the magic words because it's an actual storefront. They said, "Is there a back door?" And the person who made the map put in a back door, and I go, yeah. And well, I had them do some rolls to figure out if they could figure it out where it is, and they found the back door. So I was like, okay, exit through the gift shop, I guess. And they totally circumvented all the stuff they were supposed to go through and just went through the back door, and it literally took the big bad boss by surprise. And I said, fine, cool, you did it. I don't care. Like, what do I care, you know? But they're having fun, and they felt like badasses. And then I had them, you know, they got a surprise round. They got to, like, do stuff, and the monsters weren't ready. And, you know, it was great, you know? Do I feel cheated that they didn't get to go through the very cool traps that were pretty damn neat? In fact, I thought were going to be fun. You know what? I guess you do it long enough. You've seen it all. I'm like,
that's the thing. That's the thing. You understand that your resources are infinite. You've been playing this game for 40 years. You're going to, God willing, play it for another 40.
Right.
A lot of other people would not have that level of maturity and that kind of mindset that you have in that situation. A lot of people in that place will immediately, a GM would immediately run and basically say, my players are trying to screw me over. My players are trying to get a free win. My players are trying to circumvent the adventure. My players are trying to be trolls. They would view that behavior as problematic. And I just thought there was like, I looked on the map and there was a back door, and I'm like, yeah, there's a back door. I guess you can go through it. I didn't prepare for it. And I was like, all right, cool, fine, whatever. I don't care, you know. Yeah. And they did it, and they got ready. They jumped in. It was a big surprise, and they got a drop on the bad guy. I mean, I'll put it this way, without too many spoilers. We were on like the ninth or 10th. I think it was the 9th level, or maybe ninth level of Abomination Vaults from the end of our Pathfinder 2 campaign. And Abomination Vault is supposed to be a 1 to 10 campaign, but we were playing with one less player than we were normally, so we only had 3 players. So the players were a little bit higher level. And so they were on that level 9. They're supposed to be level 9 or 10. And my wizard, we had a sorcerer in the party who was level 11. And there was this whole huge section on one part of the dungeon with water, and there's these valves and a bunch of fights and monsters. It's this whole thing. And there's a dam. Well, because my character, one of my PCs, was level 11, they had access to the Disintegrate spell. And in Pathfinder 2nd edition, Disintegrate still targets an object and disintegrates it, basically. And it completely invalidated, like, honestly, like half of the dungeon level, because this spell could deal with that. And obviously the adventure designer, it was never made to be able to handle someone with a disintegrate spell, because no one was supposed to get that high of level, but because we were playing with less people would. And I got to be honest with you, all I could do is just cheer and clap and say, good, let's go. You know, here, you got all the experience. Good. Yes, everybody go. To me, I don't give a shit. But there's a lot of DMs out there who take a lot of umbrage, especially if they had just spent the entire night or the entire day, prepping that and getting the maps ready and doing all this other stuff. They would feel cheated, they'd feel cheated. And you might have, by the way, also, I'm playing with a group of friends. You're playing with the people who've known each other for 30 years. Imagine that was happening at a society game, and some person who's really super clever comes up with this really fun idea, and then and he's really excited because then the GM agrees with him, and you skip the combat. Meanwhile, you're sitting there with your cool dual flick mace fighter, Gamayan, and you're like, I really wanted to get to actually play the game and use my character, and I didn't get to fight or do any of my cool stuff that I built a character for. Yeah. And now I feel cheated out of an experience that theoretically this game has advertised itself as being about.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's just one thing I've learned, especially, is like, they're just, we had the encounter before that is that they were supposed to go through this, they're in a boat and they were supposed to go to a whirlpool, and they were supposed to fight these 3 shark octopuses. And they, I think, did like 30 points of damage on them, and all they did was they did every single spell they can think of to keep the shark octopuses away from them, and they made a beeline for the exit and just left. And I was like, okay, I mean, it was like there was nothing, and actually the entire game turned into literally nothing more than you cast this spell, then I'm casting this spell, and it was literally was one upping each other on spells, and that's it. It just became a totally different game. It was no combat. It was just my spell does this. It goes, well, my spell does this. Well, my spell does this.
When you on one hand you have a sword that you can swing, and on the other hand you have the ability to magically reshape reality at will. Typically, one of those things does tend to have an outsized influence.
I talked about this in a previous stream. They had repulsion, and repulsion, when it succeeds, is that no one can go near the caster.
Oh, I know.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm letting everyone else know. The 300 people watching. It's that no one can go near the caster, and I mean no one, and without and they failed the roll. So the caster basically was in this boat, and the monsters just couldn't get near him. But then the monsters had chain lightning, so I'm like, all right, well, I'll see your repulsion, and I'll raise you one chain lightning and see how that goes. So I was still getting them, the sharktopusses. Yes, they were really. It was fun, and it became. But here's the thing. And this is what you can never prepare for. It became a completely different encounter, and they enjoyed it because it was so weird. It was like, oh, it wasn't an actual fight, which we've done 10 trillion times. This was some weird psychological, like, logic puzzle between spellcasters, and it became something very different and very unusual that they've never really did before. And it was just a fun session for both of us, and there was almost no fighting. It was literally just spellcasting and seeing who can outdo the other ones, and they got away. And I was like, cool, they did it.
We had another 5 pound Cybersmith chat. Digital tools may ultimately make this easier. If an AP could more easily adjust elements of its layout, it would be more flexible, but nothing that you could do in pen and paper. And I agree. I think that would be a really cool way to imagine the future of VTTs, right? Is with more modularity and more ability to sort of adjust things easily on the fly and take advantage of the fact that, a lot of times when I'm playing D&D, it's like, guys, come on, I drew this map out and I put the minis out. We're fighting here. I don't,
well, I only play online, and I dynamically change all the time, like constantly. Like I'll draw up a new map. I'll drop in new monsters. I mean, what will happen is, like, if they do something I'm not ready for, I'll usually say, okay, just take like a 5-10 minute break. And I have, of course, I have a big library, and, and plus do this for a living. So it's a little easier for me to, like, throw together a map very quickly and literally just pull some monsters out and just get it ready to go. So it's actually quite simple to do. I find it a heck of a lot easier.
But, the thing that I've learned from doing this for the last couple of years, this internet content stuff, is I do have to remind myself that not everybody has the experience and the confidence that I have in my ability to do that. And I have to kind of, couch my understandings of people's problems under the realization that for a lot of people, they don't have that wealth of knowledge, or they don't have that collection. And so it's tough. And it's tough for me to basically say, well, here's what you do. You fly out to Cleveland. Okay. You move out to Cleveland. All right. You get in a campaign with me. You play with me for 6 months, 12 months. Okay. Then after you see how I've done it, you go and you do that with another GM who feels very confident in their ability. And then after you do that with 2 or 3 different GMs over the course of many years, you feel confident in your ability to establish your own style and go start your own campaign. But that's just not practical advice. Everybody wants, what are the 5 tips that you could do to be a better dungeon master? And it's like, I don't know that there is just an easy laundry list. Hell, there was a stream, and it was supposed to be six skills that GMs can develop in order to be a better GM. Well, we've talked about it for 7 hours. We've gotten through 2 of them, and there's still another 4 streams to come. So when it's all said and done, this little one quick video is going to be like 35 hours of content of me talking about different skill sets that GMs have to own. And it's you don't have to own them, but it's ideal if you develop some or all of them.
Tip 1. Hey, I like this one. Tip 1, start 50 years ago. Kinda.
Yeah, kinda.
I hate to say it, but it's kind of true.
Yeah, it absolutely is true. And in fact, that's actually something I even said. Karama, like, I was talking about, what was I talking about? I was just talking about how, like, when you started playing D&D a long time ago, the gaming, you weren't competing against Baldur's Gate 3. You know, you weren't competing against Matt Mercer. It was a lot easier to be the all-star GM, even though you were shit, because nobody knew any better. But now they're like, well, that game experience was fun, but I mean, my Baldur's Gate game was better, you know, and like, that's tough. If you were just starting off today, holy shit, that would be tough.
Is there a VTT,
by the way,
though? Yeah.
I do have to dip in like 5 or 10 minutes.
That's fine. Here's you have a Warren Rawlings. Is there a VTT that would dynamically adjust orcs' hit points, damage, and number in the tribe requested CR or number of player levels? Foundry does that. I mean, they all. I mean, it depends. I mean, Foundry has a lot of modules and a lot of add-ons that will do that. In Roll20, I actually have written my own scripts, and I can go in and adjust things very quickly. But yes, the long answer is yes. There's I only use those two. I only use Foundry and Roll20, so yes. I don't know what else to say on that other than
yeah, I mean, there's definitely some flexibility. I mean, I don't know how exact it is where it's like, you know, when you adjust the level, will that automatically scale things?
Well, in Foundry, you can make things weak in Pathfinder, which will help, or Elite, and that alone will just do, and it just does the math automatically on the whole thing. So that will do.
Yeah. Like when we played our Northern Reaches campaign, we had a system of mentoring and sidekicking so that different players of different levels could play together. So like you could be like a level 15 character and you could like down and like in the system, all you have to do is change your level from 15 to 5 and it would automatically obviously change all of your level based bonuses down, but it wouldn't like take away your items or your stats. So you still were stronger than a level 5 character, but your baseline stats were based off of a level 5 character. And we found that to be, while not completely effective, actually pretty seamless. So I imagine it's quite the same as well.
Oh, by the way, Aaron Mordler said there's a Foundry mod. I don't know if you know the name of the module that scales Pathfinder monsters to any level. There's a module for everything in Foundry for Pathfinder, for Pathfinder specifically.
Yeah, well, Pathfinder, you're spoiled. You're spoiled for modules.
They were clearly asking, or I guess maybe not clearly, but they seem to be asking about 5e because they mentioned CR.
Well, here's the good news: is that they implemented the 5e rule set module in Foundry, and very long story short, the old 5e module was lacking. The new one is so good that unfortunately all of us who do 5e have to redo our modules because it has a lot more functionality than the old one did, because the old one didn't have that much. So now the new one has extensive functionality. But the good news is because it has so much more functionality, it'll be easier to do things like that. Like there weren't enough hooks, if that makes sense for coders out there. There weren't enough hooks in the system to make it easy to do things like that. So give it a little bit more time in Foundry, you'll be able to do that. And then you'll have as many tools as Pathfinder players do. And when you see the true power of Foundry, you will cry, because it's like, what do you want to do? It's like, it's there, like literally, and it's usually free. It's like kind of scary how much there is in Foundry.
My main problem with Foundry, honestly, is that you know, if you do want to change things, that it can be very difficult to do it and still get the benefit of like the automation and the procedures, unless somebody else has already programmed that, you know, system option or that module for what you're trying to do, and that can be very frustrating sometimes for me personally. So. Like by default, you can only have 3 hero points in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So what if you're like, I want people to be able to have 7? Well, luckily there is a system option in Pathfinder 2nd Edition that lets you change that. But what if there wasn't? What if it was just 3 and that's the rule? And you're like, well, I guess I could have my players just manually track it on a piece of paper. And you're like, yeah, you could. But also isn't the kind of part of the allure of the system playing it on the, you know, having everything tracked for you and remembering it for you, etc.
So by the way, we have 100 likes, 117. So what are you going to do, Derik, to send us off before you go to racquetball?
I'm going to go play racquetball.
No, you got to sing. We're going to sing something.
I got nothing.
You got nothing?
I got nothing.
You're so good at singing. You're like,
do your Eldamont song. Weren't you supposed to do that?
Oh yeah, what happened to the Eldamont song?
I have some lyrics.
Okay, let's hear it.
Give a preview of one set of lyrics for people.
Workshop.
Right. Let me say one set of lyrics. And by the way, I was totally going to auto tune this when I do this, but
you still can.
Oh, I'm going to. But so in, I mean, you know, it's me, so it's a little bit you know, poking the bear, of course, right? So the lyrics, one of the lyrics is, you know, Pokemon, oh, you're my best friend in a world we must defend. So mine is, Eldamon, oh, my level appropriate friend, in a world we must defend. So, or another one is, I want to be the very best, but in a totally balanced way. Don't.
I think you just made Mark's day.
To catch them is my real test. To level up is my cause. I will adventure across the paths, searching far and wide. Dun, 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 dun. Force these Eldamon to understand the feats that are inside. All right, so those are some of
There
the
you go.
But of course, I have to auto tune it so it matches the actual original lyrics.
Right.
What's another? Oh, that's okay. That's another one. Okay. My level appropriate friend, in a world we must defend. Eldamon, gotta catch 'em, a heart so true. The tight math will pull us through. You teach me and I'll teach you. Eldamon. There you go.
Now singing in Japanese.
There you go.
Yeah, can't do that.
No, I think that most people in our audience are familiar with the English version of that song.
Poor kid said it's not bad, but not good. Perfect. Exactly.
That's what he's aiming for, I think.
Well, if once you auto tune it, it's going to sound perfectly.
Well, right. Obviously, we got to auto tune it.
You auto tune it, you won't even know. You'll be like, holy crap.
Right. Well, also too, I'm going to try to pitch match it to the original things there as well. But
there you go.
Yeah,
that's not the Poke Rap. We actually didn't even auto tune the Poke Rap. Mark did it.
Mark. All I was doing is the Pokemon theme song done with Eldamon.
The Elder Rap was not the same rap as the Poke Rap. It was just its own rap that had names of a bunch of Eldamon in it, but it wasn't to the same meter or with the same rhythm or anything. It was just its own thing.
Yeah,
it was advertised as being incredibly bad, and we did our best to put out a bad rap.
You need backup singers.
Well, I'll have to. I'll add some layering. I'll do some self harmony. Okay.
There you go.
Wow.
I'm gonna get my Audacity on.
Oh my god! Our viewers went from 300 to 250.
Well, I mean, they knew we were heading out and just. But
this is weird. It's people. It's the viewers are going down. People are hearting it like crazy. People are saying how terrible, how great it is. We're the whole gamut, man. This is it's absolute chaos, and I love it.
Yeah, Perf Jenkins says 100 likes for that. Listen, buddy, I didn't give you any sort of promises.
Mark said, fantastic $40 spent well. Hey, man, it had nothing to do with the super chats. It only had to do with the likes. Likes are free.
All right.
But all right. Well, yeah.
You got to hit your wrecking ball, right?
Well, did we even answer the question? I don't even know if we did. Maybe we did.
What was the question?
What was the question?
Why pre-made D&D adventures are disappointing. But,
I think we did. We answered it pretty quickly.
We not only did that, we also did an entire treatise about the nature of adventures, DMing as a skill set, as a bottleneck, as a philosophy. Yeah, we covered the whole
and how
thing.
that ties into adventures and how that ties into the view of people coming in that these pre-made adventures are supposed to give an empowerment promise that they never actually used to in the past. Because that Matt Mercer expectation on you, the GM, is also an expectation you now have placed on the adventures that were not placed on the previous adventures. So
absolutely,
we looked at this from the perspective of who's looking in and why they're disappointed, on who's pushing down on the designers from above within the company, asking for multiple other things, and from a variety of standpoints. So I think we did.
Oh, but before we end, I do have one more thing for Derik. The lead actor of Krull, Colwyn was I believe his name, Ken Marshall. Do you know what he also is famous for? He played Michael Eddington in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. The guy who went to the Maquis, remember?
Right.
It's the same.
Not good enough. Not good enough.
I know. It's same actor.
All right,
they look nothing alike because before he had hair, and then he did it.
Right.
Very, very different performances. He was fantastic as Michael Eddington.
Do you remember
he was so good.
Benjamin Sisko puts onto the quantum torpedoes to make the Maquis colonist worlds uninhabited for 50 years and orders Mr. Worf to fire them?
I do not remember the name of that. I obviously knew that he did that, but I don't
It was
remember what
like,
it was
I don't know, it
called.
was something, it was like Kobold or something. I don't know, what was it?
Oh, I think you might be
Wow.
right. Wow.
I'll see it.
I think they were Kobold. Yeah.
Let me.
I mean, I've seen every episode of Deep Space Nine probably like 50 times. It's on all. I used to watch it every day when it was on BBC
So Cobalt
America.
was related, but that was
What was
it
it?
looks like that's what the Eddington used to make his biotech weapons against Cardassians, cobalt diselenide.
Okay, yes. In that case, it was definitely trilithium resin.
Trilithium. All right, it was one of those. It's always one of those.
I knew that when you said cobalt, I was like, oh, that was definitely part of that episode.
Yeah, trilithium resin is correct.
All right,
there you go.
that I knew.
I've looked it up.
Oh, Deep Space Nine. Every so
good.
often when I just feel down, I just turn it on because there's nothing that cheers me up faster than a Deep Space Nine episode. They're the...
Including like the ones with Rumpelstiltskin and
no. There's a couple of stinkers. There's like the old lace one. I forgot what that one's. Not arsenic and old lace, but it's the one where they do the cross dressing. That one's not good. There's a couple of stinkers in there, but you know what? I do like Vic Fontaine. Was that his name?
yeah, Vic Fontaine.
I loved Vic Fontaine. People hate those. I was like, I mean, maybe I'm older, but like, plus also I grew up in Atlantic City. My mom's from Atlantic City, so I went down there. So I'm very indoctrinated to casino culture. So I think that was part of it, that I really like casino culture. So and you, Mr. Vegas, likes casino culture. So
Yeah, but I like Vic Fontaine more now as an adult than I did back then.
But even back then, I'm like, I just really enjoy those episodes. And the heist episode, that's one of my favorite ones of all time. Because they're like, oh, this is what's going to happen. And then everything goes wrong. And and I'm saying that is literally DMing. That is literally, to wrap it up, I actually came a full circle here. That is, if you want to see what it's like to be a dungeon master, quickly find what that episode's called. That they need to rob a casino, the members of Deep Space Nine, and they come up with this elaborate plan, and then they show what was supposed to happen, and then they go through and what actually happens. And everything that could have gone wrong does, and they have to improvise the entire way. That is DMing, because in your mind, you set it up, and you're like, this is what's going to happen. The players are going to come in, and this is exactly what's going to happen. And then when they show up, nothing goes according to plan, and you got to freaking just improvise the whole way from beginning to end. There you go. I know, I have it too. They're coming out with a new version, though. They are
second edition.
I know.
It's well needed, and I'll tell you why. Just FYI, it's cool. Don't ever print your book in black with white text. Just don't do it. It's just don't do it. And I get it. The LCARS is cool, right? Oh, it looks like the show. Look, it's the LCARS system. Don't do it.
You're 100% right. Is that is a big no-no. In fact, you never. It's actually, if you print white on black, it is 30% less legible and readable than simple black on white, and that is a big no-no. You can do it for small portions. It's like taught in my design class, but for large areas of text, it is literally actually physically exhausting on your eyes, and it's hard to read, and it makes it subconsciously
I get it. They wanted to. That's like where the aesthetic choice trumps common sense. But all right, I got to run, boys.
All right.
Take care, Derek, and everyone who's watching. Until next time, if you want to battle the zoo, you have to roll for combat.
Peace.
Bye.